right, I'm going to open this meeting of the West Linn-Wilsonville School Board of Directors. Thank you so much, everybody, for your patience. Every once in a while, we run a little behind getting started, but here we are, and we will start with roll call. Ms. Douglas, will you please call roll?
Certainly. Director Kelly Sloop. Here. Director Lewis Taylor.
Here.
Chair Chelsea King.
Here.
Vice Chair Christy Thompson.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, very good. So we will get started with our students and the reports from their high school. And I will start with West Linn High School and Sky Gomes. Please come on up.
Good evening, Dr. Ludwig and school board members. It is so nice to see everyone again, and I'm very excited to update you about everything that happened this past February and then some of our plans for March and April. And once again, I appreciate the opportunity to share with you what is happening at West Linn. February was full of lots of unexpected weather, which threw a loop in some of our original plans, but we always found a way to make it work. Starting with our annual Amazing Race, 10 teams of seniors competed in a week-long competition. It was a week full of fun and laughs for the contestants, and our student body also loved getting to watch the update videos each day. Every team received a certain amount of money for their charity of choice at the end of the week, and over $2,000 was donated. Kaya and Ella, who are shown at the top right, were our 2023 Amazing Race winners. All of our winter sports finished up their seasons, and we are super proud of everything they accomplished. Our wrestling team took home the state championship, and our basketball team got second. Everyone worked super hard, and it was really fun getting to support all of them. Thursday through Saturday of this week, our theater program is putting on the production 12th Night. Curtain opens at 7 p.m. every day, and everyone is welcome to join. Next week, Monday through Wednesday, each night there will either be a band, choir, or orchestra concert at 7 p.m. as well. Looking to March and April, we have 10 days of diversity, which started today and continues through next week. Each day is run by a club in which they get to share and educate each other about something that they are passionate about. We have come up with "We're all lions with different roars" for this year's motto. The goal of these next 10 days is for our students to learn more about each other and some of the things that they like to do. After spring break, we will be hosting Powder Puff, and then at the end of April, we will be doing our annual May Day celebration, which I will continue to talk about next month. As always, thank you so much for your time.
I think also, I'll go ahead and say this now. I don't know if it's May that we normally ask our student representatives to tell us what they're doing next. So just giving you a heads up that question will be coming at you in the next couple months. And Eli Sievers from Wilsonville High School, please come on up.
Good evening, Dr. Ludwig and school board. I'm very excited to be back and talk about the many accomplishments we've had in the past month. So I got a lot to talk about, so we'll just get started. So on Friday and Saturday, we hosted a robotics competition, and our robotics team, Error Code 0, won a creativity award and had the highest autonomous score in the event. And they also won the playoff brackets and were crowned overall winners of the event. So congratulations to them. And then one of my favorite parts about this was that we were able to host it. And I just thought it was really great to have a space where a bunch of different teams were able to come together for a very creative event. So that was really, really fun. And then with winter sports finishing up, we had a lot of accomplishments, starting with boys basketball. After a long season of dedication and teamwork, the boys basketball team earned the state championship for the second year in a row. I was unfortunately unable to attend the game. However, I thought the image in the middle was a perfect symbol of our Wildcat spirit, very, very engaged, as you can see. And then next, our wrestling team had their first state champion in our Wilsonville wrestling program history. Her name is Jasmine Brown, and she won for her bracket in the women's division. Her coach explained that she had a great season on the mat and was a great leader for the team. And then next, Helena Jones won an individual state titles in 2 events, 200 and freestyle. She also broke 2 OSAA records, one of which was her own from one of her 2 state titles last year. So congratulations to her. And then next, we had our ISEF Science Fair. We hosted the ISEF competition. We had many students who participated and are moving on to states and nationals. Many awards were given to exemplary students who displayed incredible STEM discovery, creativity, and understanding. Many students came up with incredible designs to very complex problems. So it was really, really fun to go and look through all of those projects that they had developed, as well as a few OSU scholarships were given to 2 students. And then next, after school on Thursday, March 17th, we are having our 27th annual Dornbecker Faculty Challenge fundraiser, which is where students get to play staff teams and play basketball or dodgeball. And it's super fun. You get to make team names and costumes. Over the years, we've raised over $180,000 for the research hospital and hope to raise thousands more over the course of this year's campaign. And then lastly, we recently had our incoming 9th grade nights where over 500 students and parents were able to come and learn about future attendance at high school. And so it was very exciting for new 9th graders to see possible clubs and sports that they could participate in, as well as exciting new classes. And so that's all I have for today. And so thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Eli. And we have Riverside High School. Our student was not able to make it, but we have our principal, Nick Chapin.
First of all, I apologize for not being a student, but I have an update nonetheless. So thank you, Board of Directors and Superintendent Ludwig. Just a couple updates for you. Is there a slide before this one? Perfect. So one of the projects that we've been working on all year is thinking about our maxims, our mission, and our vision going forward for Riverside High School. So this is a final version of that with the slogan Raptors Rise. This was built from input from students, parents, community members, staff members, part of our planning team. And it wraps up really nicely with our International Baccalaureate program and the key components of that program. So we explore our world, we elevate our community, and we embrace our future. And then from the learning profile, those words underneath are part of the IB learning profile. So it meshes really nice with what we're building at Riverside. So we're excited to continue to share that and continuing to move that vision forward. As you know, it's spring. The weather might not be acting like it very much, but it is spring, they tell me. And so we've been working hard at doing forecasting and course selection. So we've been at all 4 middle schools meeting with future Raptors, and also both high schools meeting with future Raptors. We had a family night like Wilsonville on March 7th. Then we've been doing middle school visits. This is actually course selection week for our middle school students. And then we'll do individual meetings with those students as we go back to make sure that they have all the courses that they need scheduled. And then we're going to bring all the 9th grade to campus at Athey Creek on April 20th to talk about the continued vision of building Riverside. So it's been a busy spring. We're also super excited. We almost have a full staff now at Riverside. That is super exciting for us. As we can build a new planning team with staff that are actually going to be in the building and start to work together to push that vision of Riverside forward to an opening this next fall. And lastly, I did want to update you on a couple of things. So International Baccalaureate has 3 programs that we're going to be running at Riverside. All 3 are in candidacy right now. So we're super excited about moving those things forward. And also for our CTE programs, we've been working really hard on creating pre-apprenticeships in our construction and health ops programs. And I believe those are going to be moving forward with options for our students next year to start to participate in those offerings. And those pre-apprenticeships in the health occupation one will be the first high school level pre-apprenticeship health ops program in the state. So we're really excited about pushing that vision forward in those 2 programs specifically, while also adding the business and marketing program. So thanks a lot for listening, and have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you, Sky and Eli, for being here. I know you have a busy life right now and taking the time, and the benefit of daylight savings time is it's still light outside when you drive home on Stafford, which I appreciate. So you're welcome to stay, of course, or go. And hey, Nick Chapin, I just want to let you know I had a great conversation with a parent in the stands recently. I had a lot of good things to say about your leadership over the years. So I just wanted to share that with you. And it's a pleasure to watch you continue and grow Riverside. Yeah. Okay, and with that, we'll move on to recognitions, and we'll invite up Mr. Pat McGuff for the Nutrition Services Appreciation.
Good evening, Board. This happens to be a happy coincidence. We've been planning to honor our nutrition services staff for some time now, and it happens to coincide with Classified Week. So I'd like to bring forward Lindsay Flores, our Nutrition Services Manager, to talk about our staff.
Hi, good evening. I am going to talk about our staff through a short presentation. Good evening. I'm Lindsay Flores here with Barbara Finch, representing Nutrition Services. Tonight, I'd like to highlight a few characteristics and accomplishments by our team. Nutrition Services is resilient. We have the ability to recover from setbacks, adapt well to change, and keep going in the face of adversity. We are caring, creative with solutions, detail-oriented, flexible, supportive. We adjust to the unknowns. We are teamwork oriented, connection builders, warm greeters, dedicated, always learning, efficient. We have fun. We personalize the experience to each school. During the pandemic, we delivered food to classrooms. We served outdoors. And we portioned and packaged all the food. We know the students by name. We work at multiple locations in one day, especially when we're hiring. And we served 200,000 more meals last year with half the staff. We're resilient. And we have the ability to recover from setbacks, to adapt well to change, to keep going in the face of adversity. We have an incredible team. I'm honored to represent our team and say thank you for all you do. We appreciate you.
So I want to add, on top of our incredible classified staff, I want to have a special thanks to Lindsay and Barbara, who have kept this going with a constant need for more help. So if you know anybody that is looking for work, send them our way. We're hiring. So thank you.
Lindsay, I just want to,
Stay up here, Lindsay.
yeah.
Barbara,
sometimes
come
you
on
can't-
up, Barbara.
Can't run away. We still have nice things we want to say to you. Thank you. I just want to say you play a very important role, I know, in all of our students' lives and my own students' lives. And we just know nutrition is so important for that learning brain. They're using so many calories, and that food that you feed them is really important, and that experience too. And so I know it has not been easy, and you have risen to the challenge. And I just want to personally thank you for feeding my kids and feeding all those kids that are our kids.
Thank you. It's an honor. Yeah, it's an honor.
I also want to let you know that you have a great grilled cheese sandwich at 18th Creek. I went on a tour with you and part of your team, and she fed me a grilled cheese sandwich. And I think I chewed my fingers off in the car. So thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
And anybody else want to go? Or I'll just wrap up. Okay. Well, I just want to thank both of you for the tremendous work you do. I know it's not easy, and all those words that you said about your team and your staff could also be applied to the two of you. Your resilience, your nimbleness, your leadership, working through adversity and doing it with great joy, and knowing your staff by name and knowing each school so personally. I was at Westland High School a while back, and I was there for another meeting, but I happened to pass by the kitchen, and lunch was getting ready. And Immediately the team swooped down. Kathy, you've got to try what we're having for lunch today. I think I left like you did with a whole armful of all the different things they wanted me to try. But the most important thing was how they talked about when they created that menu, the students they had in mind, and getting feedback from the students, and then wanting to see their expression on their faces when they heard that feedback, change something, and then could say to the students, we made something special for you today. And so the meal is more than just sustenance. It's about this service to kids. It's about a relationship, responsiveness, getting them excited, and just creating this amazing culture of interaction with them. And they're just so connected, each of them, to their schools and their students. And that comes from knowing that you are also connected to your team and that you care about them. So there's a beautiful kind of modeling there from your leadership. So thank you both. Thank you also for taking good care of us just this last Saturday at a huge equity summit. So appreciate all the work around that on top of what you do Monday through Friday. So thank you. Thank you to your team.
All right, and now I will welcome up Ms. Shyla Waldern and the classified staff appreciation.
Good evening, board. Thank you for having me here tonight. You can stand right next to me. Thank you. So the last week, the week of March 6th through 10th, 2023 was Classified Recognition Week. And while we do take this opportunity to show our gratitude and appreciation to our classified staff during those 5 days, it's also important that we remind them of their amazing value and dedication to our students and district throughout the school year. From our nutrition services team that you just heard about, that prepare and serve food to our students every day, and our para-educators that provide care and learning opportunities for all of our students, our IT specialists that ensure all the technology equipment is functional and maintained to support learning, our maintenance team that keep our building structures and systems in good use each day, our custodial staff and engineers that keep our building, that clean our buildings every day and night so we can start fresh each morning, and the administrative assistants who help staff our schools on a daily basis with substitutes and keep things running on a day-to-day basis, our health assistants who support the high level of medical needs for our students, and our transition specialists that help our students enter the workforce, and then all of our classified staff that make up this amazing group of people that really provide an intensive level of support that is needed to have our district be the successful district that it is. So we are indebted to our classified staff for their commitment to the district and to the students we serve. So thank you for giving of yourself in your role every day to make the West Linn-Wilsonville School District the wonderful place that it is. And then to accept the classified recognition is Jessica Pricer, who is the president of OSEA. She's been an amazing partner in our work to support the district together and find ways to support all of our classified staff and our students and help us improve our organization.
I just want to say Lindsay is at the bar a little high, rude. I was not warned there would be presentations. No, thank you. I thank you for the appreciation for recognizing Classified Appreciation Week. And I'm very pleased to accept this on behalf of all the classified staff. And I'm pleased to accept this because I'm really proud of my people. My people work really hard. They work hard, they do good work, they problem solve, and they offer ideas to enhance the work that they do in the situation that they work in, despite the fact that, let's face it, a lot of the tasks assigned to classified are thankless. Not in that they don't receive thanks, but in that not very many people are fighting to take those tasks on. A lot of the tasks that classified do are invisible because no one sees them do it, or they take care of it before anybody knows it needs to be done. So my people do thankless, invisible work, and they do it well. And it adds value to the district. I think that we have value, and I know that you guys recognize that. The district administration do, the school board does, because year after year, you have continued to ratify the classified contract that we've bargained. Every contract renewal is an opportunity to show appreciation for classified staff, not just in a verbal or a symbolic way, but in a way that's really practical and people see every month when their paycheck comes through. And I received a lot of thanks this year for that contract that we bargained, especially in the inclement weather, which we had some of this year. I received a lot of thanks, especially from our maintenance staff, about how that really gave them peace of mind, and it helped people know what was going to happen and what was going to move ahead. You approved that. We could have bargained ourselves blue in the face, and if you hadn't approved that, it wouldn't have gone forward. So the thanks were passed on to me, and I want to pass them on to you. So thank you for your words of appreciation. Thank you for your words of recognition. And I thank you for doing your best to value my people as much as I do.
Jessica, I just want to say something to you directly. The classified staff have my respect and adoration forever. And I echo your comments, but also I just wanted to say to you that I just have appreciated your leadership the past 3 years, 2 years, 3 years. Yeah. You just have proven to be a very steady, thoughtful, grounded, articulate leader. And I'm thankful for you to be heading up the classified staff. So thanks for the extra stress and time and commitment that you've taken on in that leadership role.
Thank you, and you're welcome.
Yeah.
Ready?
I'm ready. You gonna make me cry?
No.
Because that would also be rude since it's being
But the thing
recorded.
you want to know about Jessica is you never want to go after Jessica at a welcome back assembly, because she just has a way to think about the work, a way to think about people, connect it with often beautiful literature and poetry, and create this picture of the work that we do together. And when you walk away, there really isn't this sense of us, them, or classified, certified. It really is, we're a family, and we know each other by our name, and less really about the position or the classification, but about who we are together. And I want to thank you as well for the years that you put in. I know you didn't start thinking it would be this long. You filled in for someone as a favor.
Someone told me, oh,
Yeah.
it's easy. You just have a couple meetings a year.
Oh, sweat. And what transpired is that we all just, what we knew about you in your work as an IT specialist just transitioned beautifully into your work as a leader for OSEA. Is you were thoughtful, you were prepared, you sought deeply to understand a situation, you listened, you were patient. You led kind of like a teacher of a classroom, really thinking about caring for your students, your people, and thinking about what needed to come next. And it's been a joy to work alongside you. And I know that wherever you go with leadership or whatever your position continues to be, it's going to be a joy to be a partner in the work with you. And thank you for representing classified staff so beautifully. And we are so grateful to all of them. They may not be watching this tonight, but let them know that they are the heartbeat of this organization, deeply valued and deeply appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.
All right, and it is National School Social Worker Appreciation Month, and Ms. Nicole Hyatt. There you are. Hi, come on up.
All right, I'll need to move this down a little bit. As my father-in-law likes to remind me, I'm short on one end. Yeah, right. Good evening. I'm here to share and celebrate with you tonight the work of a small but very important group of professionals in our district, our mental health specialists. This team embodies the word empowerment. On a daily basis, they use their mental health lens to support and empower our students, families, and educators, and they do it with such care. I know I'm inspired whenever I am fortunate enough to observe their work, whether it be at a training on anxiety for parents or to observe as an IEP team member, or when they're working hard to help a family find outside support for their child. Our team recently reflected on why they became mental health specialists in the first place. They wanted to be a part of a community to focus on prevention and mental health. They remember their own student experience, and they recognize the power of their remembrance to support our youth. Despite working in multiple locations and providing mental health support across the team, they recognize that schools are a pillar. Students spend the majority of their time at school, and providing these services in this context is critical and something that they wanted to do. And up here, you will see there are a small group. You'll see pictures of them with their families. And first, I want to highlight Brittany Buchholz, and you will find her right there at the bottom in the middle. She's our middle school social worker on the team, and she shares that she loves bridging the gap between support outside of school and support in school, so students have the mental health support that they need in educational settings. Cheryl Wilson, who is our Westland High School social worker on the team, recently shared that with the community, our district equity team, and at our equity conference about her collaboration with our school resource officer. We know that high school is an important time for our young people, and they were able to share, she and the resource officer were able to share about the collective work of prevention, building meaningful relationships through culturally responsive practices and restorative practices. She describes the essence of her work as being open and authentic and providing a safe space for students to speak their truth. Catrice, our Wilsonville High School mental health specialist on the team, and also a school psychologist, shared about empowerment through listening and presence. And if you met Catrice, you can see that in action. She shared that being a mental health specialist allows her the opportunity to continue to listen and share space with students, parents, staff, and the community. She loves being able to see people grow, heal, and find joy, and that is healing for her as well. And then Sarah Hyatt, our primary school social worker on the team, describes the essence of her work as a values-based profession, where the mental health specialist code of ethics requires them to always be working within their social work values, including social justice, service, dignity, and the worth of each person, and the importance of human relationships, integrity, and competence. Sarah sees the essence of her role in encompassing these values, actively working towards social justice and social change, and anti-racist and anti-oppressive practices. Her role includes reducing stigma surrounding mental health by increasing education and supporting the mental health needs of our students within the educational model. This team uses a mental health lens to add to the wraparound supports and services in our education system. This lens allows them to lean in with colleagues and think deeply about how we support our students and families. We could not do the work of education without them, and we are deeply grateful for everything they do for us each day. Thank you.
Ms. Hyatt, would you like to stay up here while we shower you with a little more appreciation? Yeah.
Not so fast.
Yeah, I just want to recognize that that is a small team and you do big work. And that very last statement that you said that we can't meet the education, this is my paraphrase of what you said, but we can't meet the educational needs of our students without also meeting all these other needs as well. And so thank you for doing that challenging work. Thank you for your team. And I hope just to continue to see, your team grow and the resources provided to you continue to stretch.
Thank you. Yes, it is it's important work that they do, especially over the last few years. They have really, their work has grown a lot and we appreciate them very much. So, thank you.
Add, it wasn't that long ago that we had one social worker in the district, and that was Cheryl. And she was at Art Tech High School. And, it was that when we needed that kind of connection for families, we would reach out to community and resource. And it became apparent that there were staffing shortages in the world of social work. And that also we got to understand that our families also felt very connected to school and often wanted to trust someone that was also connected to school. And if the need was immediate, it made sense to have more social workers at school. So those grants that we've been receiving from the state, like the SIA grant and those kinds of funds, have allowed us to expand that team. We first moved and added Brittany to work with Cheryl, and had Cheryl at the high school level and Brittany across all the middle schools. And then it became clear that our primary families just had some specific needs as well, and hired Sarah then not long after that. And then through the pandemic, we discovered, and coming out of that our high school families and students were telling us that having more immediate access to their social worker was really important. And so for Cheryl to work across two large high schools just wasn't sustainable. And it was really great that we were able to hire and add Catrice, which allowed for a full-time person at each high school. So it's nice to see now that there's a team. They present workshops together for the community, for our families, and then together they become a very strong network of resource and support. So thank you. I know that part of your role, Nicole, is to work with them, to bring them together, to help them think forward as a team, and to help them generate more ideas for the community. So thank you for working with them as their leader and developing a really strong team for us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. They really are a special group of people. And I've watched them put together presentations for parents on different topics. And I remember thinking, I wish I had this information as a parent, as with children going through high school or middle school, and realizing what a gift that is to our community. So thank you. Yeah.
All right, that concludes our recognitions, and we'll move on to the board member and superintendent reports, and we'll start with you, Director Taylor.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all. I got a few things. I think that between our last board meeting and this board meeting, a lot of the topics that we've been discussing in here have been kind of heavy on my heart. And I want to thank, members of the audience, because I've met with quite a bit of you around pretty sensitive topics. And so I want to thank you all for your input, your research, and all the hard work that you've done to share like a lot of stuff that you've done. And I want to say I'm impressed. And I will say that it also shapes the way that I get to sit in front of you and make a decision. And the decisions that we have to make at times is very difficult. So I try to separate myself from those decisions and some of my own personal beliefs so that I can represent you better. It's not just about me, it's about you. But as I think about you, and I think about the majority of the people that we spend our time with, it's usually you and it's usually them. So it's the administrators and the parents, but there's these important people that are in between that are doing all the work, which is our teachers and our kids. And so the way that I chose to spend the majority of my time between our last board meeting and this board meeting was actually sitting down with the people who do the work, the people that we claim to represent, the people that we think that we understand better than them. And so I sat with teachers, I sat with kids, and my favorite part is sitting with the kids. They're resilient. I think we shortchange them. And it's amazing when we hear their voice, the things that just really don't bother them that bother us. And a lot of times they're disconnected from many of the topics that we discuss in this room. And so when you ask them about it, oh, how do you feel about this? Or how do you feel about that? There's really no connection to any of it for them. And I'm always shocked by that. And then it makes me question, what in the heck am I doing sitting here? And I hear all these problems, but when I talk to the actual kids, they're not having the same struggles that we're having. And I'm happy for that, to be honest with you, because they have enough that they have to deal with. So I've learned a lot by listening to our children over the last few months. And what it made me also go back to is a principle that I have is that when the policy becomes more important than the people, the system will fail. And I was just focused on those beings in the middle and we don't get a lot of opportunity to talk to our educators and our teachers. We talk a lot with administration and we talk a lot with parents, but we don't really get to ask our teachers, what do you think about all this stuff, right? They're protected by unions and they're protected by their own armor, right? Because they feel attacked or they don't feel like they can actually voice what they truly feel when they sit in front of groups like this without being shamed or stoned or whatever you would like to call it. And I had the opportunity to ask kids and teachers, just give it to me raw, and just sit down with them. And I was shocked at what I was able to learn was important to them, what they felt like was working, what they felt needed improvement. And the gap is not as wide as we make it out to be. And so I'm inspired by that. I'm inspired by you. And I just wanted to give my appreciation to all of you to our teachers, to our kids who get lost in the middle of all this stuff, and to the administration too for continuing to do work that I know is thankless at times. And it's going to get harder and we're going to have disagreements even more. But I think that if we can continue to have empathy and show some human spirit and grace, I think we can get through anything as a community and as a board. So I just want to say that to you guys. I'll have a nice evening.
All right, we'll move on to you, Director Sloop.
So I was also doing similar to what Director Taylor was doing. The past month has been pretty busy with getting involved in the school and community events. The district hosted a filming Forget Me Not, which follows a young couple advocating for their son who has Down syndrome. They wanted him to be allowed to attend a school in an inclusive learning environment. And the parents had many roadblocks. This was over on the East Coast. And eventually they had to move. And we were in a breakout session after the movie, and I just reflected that the two things that hit me is the mother just saw her son as a normal child. She did not see him being any different. And I grew to appreciate that Linn-Wilsonville allows students with disabilities to be right along with their peers in the classrooms. I joined Director Thompson at the Rotary Lunch to learn about the new location for the Adult Transition Center for students with disabilities. And there are young adults that may take a couple classes at Clackamas Community, and then they attend the Transition Center where they learn about life skills. They can just hang out. They can sit in a computer at a computer and learn how to write a resume. And the key now is the new location is going to be in Wilsonville, right smack on the transit line, centered around all these businesses. And the goal is to partner with some of these local businesses where these students would be able to develop some work skills. A previous partnership was with Park Rose Hardware in West Linn, where the teacher and some students would go, and the students would learn how to stock the shelves, put stickers on the merchandise, sweep the floors, and it was a great experience. I also got to observe the Spanish dual language program at Lowry Primary. And I must say, I am blown away every time I walk into a school and see the quality of teachers that we have. They are absolutely top notch. They are completely focused on the kids, and the students are very joyful, they're engaged. We then visited the heritage classes at Wilsonville High School, and I can't speak highly enough again of the teachers. There was one teacher who was with a heritage class, and she was providing food, baking tortillas and beans and rice for them. And they were just hanging out, and they were making Valentines in all these different languages and making a mural on the wall. We visited the hub, and I had heard about this, but I never got to experience it firsthand. And both high schools have a place where students can go. It's very relaxing. It's very inviting. They have some crafts. They have some fidgets. If you interview the kids, they talk about, they can have snacks there. It's a place to have one-on-one to do their homework. They'll say they kind of feel safe there. And it's just a great place to kind of get away from the big structure of the classroom, and sometimes just being in a high school can be very intimidating. So that was very rewardful to just be able to go and observe that. I got to have a sneak peek of the new auditorium, and we took a little quick dive into some of the classrooms that are going to be the career technical training classrooms. And then this last weekend was the amazing Equity Summit with Bonnie, who's a speaker. Lewis was a good sport. he got involved in some of the dialogue. And then they had breakout sessions. I went to one that was just with Cheryl Wilson, who's a social worker and the SRO. And I was blown away about how, a couple years ago, they did a survey about the SROs and they've adapted what the SRO's role is. And now students are coming to the SROs more as a mentor, an educator. It's not necessary. It's not the law enforcement where just go in and just arrest, or discipline the students. It's more of a relationship and an educator, a listener. And it was just really nice to see that transition and flexibility and adapting to a newer way of interacting with the students. And then moving onward, I was going through all of our policies because I did some tours, and I learned that the board policy ultimately is responsible for the curriculum development and the decisions on matters of just curriculum. And I also noticed that number 3, operate in an accessible and transparent manner to encourage and generate community involvement, as our parents, students, and community partners are an integral part and valued voice towards the change in our district. I personally myself wanted to dig a little deeper. For a better understanding for me, I like to kind of just research and experience things hands-on. I'm a visual learner. So Dr. Pryor was able to arrange to have me visit some primary schools. And so I went to visit Sunset, and I observed the students working on diagraphs in their classroom. And then we went on to Willamette, which was doing a pilot program of foundations in the kindergarten classes. And that was eye-opening. I mean, their writing was impeccable. It was legible for kindergartners, very neat. Everything was written in a straight line. They were using tiles where they would just take like sat and then remove the S and make cat. So they were breaking it down and decoding it. The teacher was very engaging with the students. They were very focused back. She gave positive reinforcement. Actually, all the teachers did. And it was just amazing. One of the teachers said that she has not seen the progress that she has witnessed this year ever in her classrooms. Then I went on to Sunset and visited the primary classes there. I was able to see students working in a large group where they were just reading their books, and then the teacher took a smaller group of students and they read the same book, and then they were able to read back what they learned, like comprehension. So again, it was I witnessed motivation, engagement, some comprehension. Let's see. So moving forward, I still have some questions that I will be asking later about the postponement, because I still feel that I still need to get some information as far as some benchmark assessments, some Ames Web, because to make a decision, I still need to have some questions answered. But I will say that I have no doubt that our teachers are very capable of teaching our kids. I do want to hear more from them of what they have to say as what they are teaching. And I would like to get more feedback from them, as they are the ones that are teaching this. They see it every day. They're witnessing every day. I would like to get more honest feedback from them. And So I want to do a deeper dive into that, because I do believe that when students are struggling, as when I went to Boone's, that was the other primary I went to, the instructional coordinator was honest, and she said that our English learners are struggling. And if a student is struggling academically, behavior issues will increase. And that will also cause teacher fatigue. That will be increased, and as well as student will lose their confidence and their motivation. And I want to make sure that what we are teaching as far as curriculum is adaptive and inclusive for all of our students. And when I was looking at some of our literacy, and I know looking at one test assessment is not the end all because there's a lot of factors, but Boone's Ferry had a literacy rate of 37%, and our Latino population was 12%. And that is concerning to me because I want to be inclusive, and I want to make sure that we are adapting and finding a program where everybody is learning and that it is the right fit. And I feel that as we are diversifying in our district, we need to diversify our language, our literacy curriculum. So that's all I have to say for now, and I'll follow up later.
All right, you're up, Vice Chair Thompson.
You. One of my favorite things is I've always enjoyed being in our schools and going to our school events. I loved school myself, and then I was a high school teacher because I wanted to get back in schools. However, tonight I want to focus just on one of the things that I attended during the last month. And Director Sloop was there as well, and she brought it up a little bit, but I want to go into it because I want our community to know how they can get involved, especially anyone who's here in the room or if you're listening. So on Wednesday, February 22nd, Director Sloop and I did attend the Linn-Wilsonville Joint Rotary and Chamber Luncheon. Did I say that? And please correct me if I get any of this wrong. And many of you in this room were there as well. And first of all, I want to say thank you to our amazing board secretary, Kelly, who always feeds us so well. And I just want to publicly acknowledge you, talk about a behind the scenes person that ever since I started on the board, one of the biggest blessings, honestly, of being on the board is working with Kelly. And she has done an amazing job of always just taking care of us, whatever event we go to. I mean, many of you in the room, how many has she offered you coffee, or can I get you something? Are you hungry? Did you eat? We've got food. And so that's my first acknowledgement. I mean, the food was wonderful. Second, I want to say it's always a blessing to be in a room full of Rotarians and those involved in our community. I don't know what you call the chamber people, but truly some of the most service-oriented, community-minded, selfless, and optimistic people with whom I've had the pleasure of interacting. And I want to thank both the Westland and Wilsonville Rotaries and also the Chamber just for everything you do in our school communities and our families. I remember attending an event at Meridian Creek, I believe it was before the pandemic, where they were there serving a dinner at Meridian during one of our family events. And so just thankful for everything they do. But I want to talk a little bit just about what the focus of the luncheon was. It was to educate our community leaders, so our Rotarians in our chamber, on ways in which they can support our adult transition services and to showcase the new location of this program. So Director Sloop alluded to it, but I asked Curtis if he could put up a map so you could all see this new location. It's kind of, I would refer to it as a community facing hub right in the center of the action of downtown Wilsonville. So near kind of where you might find Red Robin, I think there's a tanning place right next to it. AT&T is kind of around there. So the great thing is this program is going to be located centrally. So it's going to be on the transit line. Oh, there it is. Thank you. So you can kind of see where it was at. So this is where we held the luncheon. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with what the Adult Transition Services Program does, it serves students with disabilities ages 18 to 21 who have graduated from high school with an alternative diploma or certificate, as well as students who have left high school without earning a completion document. The mission of this program is to help these students transition from school to post-school life, helping them develop the skills they need to successfully live, learn, and work in their communities. Our two fabulous, I want to highlight some people now, our two fabulous adult transition teachers, Sherry Canfield and Summer Buzza. Did I pronounce her last name correctly? Along with our student services team of Lauren Brigsby, Stephanie Clausen, and Nicole Hyatt. Is she still here? Did she leave? She left, of course. Wanted her to stay. Have worked to foster relationships with community businesses, as Director Sloop alluded to with the Park Rose hardware, and with our local community college. So as a result, our students are attending classes at Clackamas Community College and working in local businesses. This new community-facing location makes transportation to and from those sites easier and gives students the opportunity to easily interact with their community. And here's where all of you come in, and anyone else who might be listening at home. There are several ways that community members can support this expanding program. And Curtis has just put up on there kind of a card, and it also has a QR code. So if you are here in the audience or you are listening at home and you want to pull up that QR code, it will give you information and also talk about how you can get involved. So first of all, financially invest in the new space. The district will be remodeling this former business space into a practical, now these are my own words, hip and happening hub for these students, right? Yeah, because we want them to feel good. Those of us who work, when you walk into your places of business, you want it to feel, I don't go to my work to have a bad time. And so we want it to be a place where they, so feel free to use that when you're remodeling. But anyway, if you are interested in financially investing, or if you are interested in serving as a mentor or know someone who would be a good mentor to one or more of these students, if you want to connect with the district with a potential employer like Park Rose Hardware. So if you think there's an employer that might want to work side by side, and what happens is they do such a good job, Summer and Sherry, of coming alongside that business and working to make sure that it's a mutually beneficial relationship to both the business as well as the students. Or if you yourself or someone or business that can provide a job to one of these young adults. So again, this information is on that you can get it from the QR code. And so just a great way to learn more about this absolutely amazing program that I think is a perfect example of one of our district's goals this year, which is to create belief and belonging in our students, because this program has created a belief in belonging in this segment of students that may not have felt that in the past. And so it's one of the most amazing programs. We do a lot of amazing things in this district. And this is definitely one of those at the top of the list. So I just want to make sure not only that you know about this program that is really unique to our school district, but you also know how you can be a part of it if you are so interested. So that is all I have. Thank you, Curtis.
Wow, my board colleagues are representing with some good board reports. I'm just going to speak very briefly to three of those amazing programs that I had the benefit of attending over the past month. One is the ISAF, the science fair, basically for the high schoolers. I don't know if science fair is the right word, though. I mean, they're working with scientists from across industries and doing some really cutting edge innovative research. So it was cool to be there, even though the weather was pending. The amount of time and effort that the mentors put into getting those that research up to the level it needs to be at, and the number of students that are going on to state and national science fairs, so to speak, is incredible. So ISEF was a real highlight this past month. And then kind of on the same vein is the robotics, which we heard about earlier, Air Code 0 being the Wilsonville team winning first place. And that autonomous award also, what's incredible is that we have students writing code. They're basically building the software to run that robot. And the first 15 seconds of the robot's venture out into the court is completely automated, and then the rest of it is manual driven. But I was informed by my student who is shameless brag here, the software lead, was like, Mom, it's not just that first 15 seconds. Software is running the robot the whole time. And so we have mentors from Lamb and DW Fritz and Xerox like coming in and volunteering a huge amount of time to those students. And the students build that robot completely independently. The mentors just kind of guide it. I think I heard that the Westland team got second. Yeah. So really, really cool. It's an exciting day too, when you're there, like they're dancing and they're dressed up and it's very loud. So that is also a thing. And then the highlight for sure was the District Equity Summit on Saturday with the different cities and Rotaries and people from around the district, and the student voices, just to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, Director Taylor. I sat in on the affinity group with the Wilsonville students, and to sit in a circle and pass the squishy ball around and have really authentic, connected, meaningful conversations and listen to our students is such a moving experience, because that's why I'm here. And so to be connected to them was awesome. So thank you to everybody who put that on. And that's it. Superintendent Ludwig, you're up.
Thank you. All right, we can go to the next slide. So I think the kids stole my thunder and everything I was going to talk about in this first slide, but it has been an incredible couple of weeks, and I've been also incredibly impressed with how board members have been at so many of these student activities and events. Miraculously incredible productions of Puff at Wilsonville High School, 12th night at West Linn, which has a couple more nights if you haven't caught it, ending up this week. Great productions. Both of the students mentioned the athletics and the competitions, and it's been an exciting few nights with a lot of basketball games and driving back and forth to Corvallis and over to Childs, and to see our boys basketball end with a first and second at state is also equally impressive, not to mention the wrestling that we heard about, and also some of our individual student awards. The bottom right-hand corner picture is the keynote speaker for our CREST Jane Goodall Science Symposium, the ISEF Fair. And if you weren't here last month when I talked about it, this is soon to be Dr. Nicole Day, who is an alumnus of Wilsonville High School, and now working as a brilliant scientist, doing incredible work around cancer research. And she just, on a night when it was snowing and we were trying to finish up quickly, just mesmerized the students in the audience around her work, and also encouraged them. I was right where you were a few years ago as an ISEF student, and this work in science can be achievable to you as well. So I want to thank Dr. Nicole Day for spending that couple of days with us, judging students' research projects, and then being a keynote speaker for us. I was going to talk about robotics, and we've had several people mention it. These kids, as a team, really represent a lot of creativity and brilliance and collaboration, because their roles are many, whether they're designing software or the components of the robots, or marketing, or doing the communication or the educational component. They work together in a variety of roles. On the left, you'll see our West Linn team, to be determined, that took second at regionals. They were in a different competition. There's a lot of teams now, so they have to have different competitions around the state. So they were at the Clackamas competition that was held in Oregon City, and did brilliantly there. And then just this weekend, Aero Code 0, the Wilsonville teams came in first with, they're often a group team. I think they were with Camus and Bend, but they prevailed and came in first. And So it's just a great example of kids doing brilliant things almost every corner that you turn, and I'm really proud of their efforts. And they've been working for months and months for these competitions. As soon as they get that envelope and they find out what the challenge is, they begin designing. So their coaches, shout out to all of their coaches and their teachers and community volunteers who support them as well. I think next they go to like the Oregon State Fair and then maybe on to districts and worlds. So from there, yeah. And then I do want to talk about our Community Equity Summit that occurred this Saturday. And what is unique about this is sometimes there are equity summits that, work with the staff at a district, or kind of have a scope around employees or one organization. But what we've done over the years is really expand this to include the community. And we had about 250 people there. They represented both cities, both mayors were there, their council members, law enforcement, chambers, Rotaries, both alliances, the Westland Alliance and the Wilsonville Alliance. President Tim Cook from Clackamas Community College and some of his staff were there. Clackamas County offices, Clackamas ESD, Representative Neuron and Representative Walters were there, Senator Aaron Woods. And then, of course, we had quite a number of students. We had about 50 or some middle school students, about 25 high school students, staff and leaders, all coming together, thinking about our work collectively and not in isolation. So when we think about our families, we all have touchstones in the lives of our families, cities, businesses, as well as schools. And how do we come together to support our families? Keynote speaker was the national poet and author Kwame Alexander, whose books The Crossover, Rebound, Door of No Return, and then he just mesmerized us with the reading of one of his books, An American Story. And then later did a breakout session, private session, just with our 50-some middle school students, an interactive writing session, which was just phenomenal. So the next slide just shows a few of the other breakout sessions. On the top, you can see Kwame there. He had to take his jacket off. He was rolling up his sleeves and really inspiring our students. But we had affinity circle groups with our high school students. Mayor from Wilsonville and city councilor talked about the affordable and equitable housing project in Wilsonville. And then some of the other breakout sessions that were mentioned with social workers and SROs, the Wilsonville DEI committee, and then a number of others. Both cities represented some of the work that they were doing. We closed out the event with hearing from highlights from each of the city mayors and then closing remarks from Chair King. So I want to thank our board for attending, for setting aside that time and providing that support. And it was very obvious to community members that you were there and that you were fully participating, and a lot of great comments about your leadership in the district. So thank you for being there. All right. At this time, I'm going to move to kind of just a different part of the report. The last few months, we've been sharing with you about the process for some books that we were reviewing that came up through some concerns in the community. And we reported on the process and how it was going. And what I have for you tonight as the board is my report to you. It will include the decision made by the committee. So just to recap, the Office of Teaching and Learning was the group that put together the review of the 9 texts that did receive some complaints or concerns. These books, just to review, are only in our middle and high schools. None of the books were in our primary schools. And all of the texts that were brought forward are ones that we would categorize as student-selected books from libraries. So none of these were required reading. These were optional texts that students could check out if they wanted or didn't have to. Our district librarians do have processes and criteria in place for selecting texts for libraries, and there is sensitivity around student needs around specific texts. So if a family or a student says, this is a text I prefer not to read, we work really hard to get an alternative text. And we can also, with parent requests, put any kind of restrictions on for a certain text to be checked out or restricted for their children. So those processes are in place. They have been and they continue to be. And next. So to guide our text review process, we followed our AR and our policy and used that guidance, which involved putting together a committee. And so we had a committee of 9 people to review these 9 texts. 2 of them were parents with children in our schools. Both had written and submitted comments to either the board or the district. So we selected from that group. There were 2 librarians who have middle and high school experience, 2 district administrators, a high school language arts teacher, a community member with library experience, and at each meeting was a high school student. And next. The committee members had a variety of responsibilities to be on the committee and to do this review. One is that they were asked to read all of the texts in their entirety before each meeting. They were also provided the opportunity to read all the letters and written comments that had been sent in from community members. So it was in a binder. So they had access to that before the meetings. And then they were asked to review a number of documents that would be used to guide the process. And you can see those listed there. The guidance to school districts around challenged materials from the Oregon Department of Education, criteria from the American Library Association, and then some other documents from Common Sense Media, School Library Journal, etc. So doing some kind of grounding and context for the work. Next. They ended up meeting 4 times. There were 4 long meetings, and at each meeting they would review 2 or 3 books. So 2 at each meeting, and then one of the meetings they reviewed 3. And to get started, they established some norms for how they were going to operate as a group. And you can see the norms there, which makes sense around being respectful, making sure all viewpoints were heard, discussing differences respectfully. And the last 2 bullets there was really about making sure that the meetings were a safe space, that people could speak as openly and candidly and vulnerably without feeling a concern that something was being recorded or was going to be reported. And that was really important to the group. Okay, next. And I just want to say at this point that I was not a part of the committee. So it's really important that when I share this, I'm sharing more about the process because I was not privy to the information that occurred during the meetings and the conversations. And we wanted to keep that integrity and that confidence intact. So at each of the meetings, the library books were reviewed using a number of protocols and some of the prompts that would get the group going. You can see those questions there. And there were opportunities for structured conversation where each member would get like 3 minutes to speak. And then there were times also for open discussion that allowed for members of the committee to speak about a text, to have discussion, to ask questions, and to build on each other's ideas or to share their experiences. So there was both structured as well as open time to really talk about the books. And then after the structured time and open time and discussion about each of the texts, there was an opportunity then for a vote, an anonymous ballot to determine the outcome of the review for each of those books. And the committee members had 3 voting choices: to continue the inclusion of the material in the library with no restrictions, or to restrict that text to a specific grade or school level, or to determine whether this wasn't a text that should be in a school library and therefore have it removed. There was a time with 2 of the texts when they went through a process called a 2-round majority rule because there were votes in all 3 choices. So the agreement was when that would happen, they would take the top 2 and do another round of voting. And that happened with 2 of the books, and you'll see. So what I'm going to share now, before you don't show the next slide yet, but what I'm going to share now is the decision by the group, and I'll go through each of the books and you'll get to see. And just to remind the board again that the decisions by the committee are final. That's our process. So it doesn't go next to me or to you as a board. This is the outcome. Okay. And again, I was not part of the committee, so I can't speak to specific comments or details. That was an agreement made by the committee around their conversations, but we're going to speak to the process and to the outcomes. Okay, so next slide. So here you see the first three books, Heartstopper, volume, and this meeting is recorded so people can watch it later if you can always watch the recording. The first book, Heartstopper Volume 1, currently it's in all of our middle and high schools. And after discussion and review, the committee has determined to continue to keep these books in their current locations with no restrictions. There were some votes to restrict, but the majority said to keep them at the middle and high schools. And there were no votes for complete removal of that text at all. With the book Heartstopper Volume 2, currently they're in our middle and high schools. And you can see again that the committee determined after reviewing to keep them where they are in the library with no restrictions. There were a couple of votes to restrict, but the majority said to keep them where they are, and there were no votes to remove that text. The third book, Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, is currently at 2 of our high schools and at 1 middle school. And the decision by the committee is to restrict that text just to the high schools only. And there was some acknowledgement that the intention was for this book to only be at the high schools, and unsure how a copy was at one of our middle schools, and perhaps when it came out in a movie that somehow the book got in one of our libraries there. So there was an acknowledgement of that to restrict the text to the high school level only. In the first round of voting, there was 1 vote for removal of this text completely, but this is one of the books that did go to that 2-round voting system. And in the second round, you can see the result then 6-3. Okay, next. The book Beyond Magenta, which is currently at 2 of our high schools and 1 of our middle schools. The decision was to continue to keep these books in the library with no restrictions. There were a couple of votes to restrict to specific levels, and this was also one of the books that had a vote for removal in the first round of voting, but in the second round, we see the results of 7-2. And those were the only 2 books, Beyond Magenta and Me, Earl and the Dying Girl, that had a first and a second round for voting. The next book, Milk and Honey, is currently in our 2 high schools. And the decision was to continue with these at the high school with no restrictions. There were 2 votes to restrict to specific levels, but there were no votes for that text to be removed from the library altogether. The Sun and Her Flowers also are at both of our high schools. And again, you can see the decision by the committee was to continue keeping them in the library with no restrictions. There were 2 votes to restrict, but there were no votes for removal of that text at all. And the next. Yeah.
It has to do with their votes to restrict and their votes to remove.
So restriction means placed only at certain levels, like high school or middle school or grade level.
Okay, I guess my question is, what if they're already just at the high school? They're already restricted to the high school, so what's the difference?
Yeah,
That's where I'm at. Does that make sense? Like, that's where I'm not.
Yeah.
If there's no.
They'll stay there for now. So the next book is Lawn Boy. and it's currently only at Wilsonville High School. And the decision is to continue to keep it in the library with no restrictions. There were 2 votes to specify or restrict to specific levels, but there were no votes for removal. The book Flamer is at both Westland and Wilsonville High School. And this one was to continue in the library with no restrictions. There were 4 votes to restrict to specific levels, but the majority was to keep in the library with no restrictions. And there were no votes for removal. And then the last book is Crank, currently at both high schools. And this one had 7 votes to restrict this text to high school level only. And there were 2 votes for removal of this book. The majority determined to restrict text to high school level only. So next slide. So this concludes the review by the committee of the 9 texts. These decisions are final, so they don't come before the superintendent for any adjustment or the board. According to our policy in AR, this is where the decision remains. They can be reviewed again in 3 years if there's a request by a parent or a student or a staff member. We will share these decisions right away with our teacher librarians who will make those adjustments to the text in the library accordingly. And again, just to remind our board and anyone watching that we do have a selection process for library books, and any new books that come, our librarians do go through a process for how to determine how books get in the library. They follow their handbook, the guidance that's outlined in their handbook and in our policy AR. I want to thank the committee members. There was a lot of time and work on their part to read the text. They did research. They took this very seriously. They listened. They were incredibly respectful. The report that came to me was this was a very good example of dialogue that really sought to listen to understand and to think about each other's perspective. They were challenging conversations, but everyone worked to make a determination that they felt was in the best interest. We know there's a range of feelings about each book, and we got a lot of good feedback through that process. And so that feedback will be shared with our teacher librarians and our staff on how to continue to think about the importance of when we select library books, how to make sure they're appropriate for students, their interest and learning needs, and their developmental level. So that concludes my report to you about the outcome of the Library Review Committee and those 9 texts. The review has been completed and the decision has been made, and then we'll act accordingly in terms of adjusting as need be where any of those texts may or may not be. So that's it. Thank you.
All right.
Awesome.
So we're gonna move on to the consent agenda.
I was
And-
just going to ask, can I just ask a couple clarifying questions about, and it has nothing to do with, I just want to understand some of the restrictions and exactly what they mean. Is this an okay time to ask that, or?
Yeah, I'll look to the board chair because again, I want to be really careful that we don't share things that
I
maybe
think
committee
it's-
members said or.
Yeah, no, I'm not asking anything. I just want to understand. They're just 2 things. I just had 2 questions. One was on when you say restrict, anyway, I'll wait and let you decide if I can ask them or not, but it was just understanding the verbiage. That's it.
It's Vice Chair Thompson. I think if you feel like this is the right time for you to ask a question about the process and it's an easy answer, then we could do that. Otherwise, it could be something that you follow up with after the meeting and.
Oh,
get
it's
some
not about the
clarification.
process. It's more just about exactly what it means. So for example, like when, let's say we had the book in Westland High School and Wilsonville High School, and they're voted to be, let's say it said no restrictions. My question was, does that mean it can also be in the middle schools too? Or does that mean it stays? So if it's already just in high schools and the vote was no restrictions, I guess what my question is, Does that mean no restrictions, even if it's just in our high schools, it can still go down into the middle schools? Just see what I'm,
Yeah, I don't know if Curtis, can you put?
so I'm
that-
just trying to
one of my
clarify
slides
what
back
that
up?
means.
Let's just look at the definitions there.
Because my assumption is if I have those questions, that people watching might have those
Yeah.
questions too.
Now, I think part of what we want to remember is that the librarians selected these books for middle and high school, and that's where they felt and what it says the current is where they were appropriate to be. So there, thank you, Curtis. And if you can just do full screen so we don't see the slides on the left, I think we can see the text larger there. Okay. So your question is, what's the difference between A and B?
Yeah, and I guess it might be helpful if you put up one of the slides that shows like the books there and where it'll say like, okay, this book. So for example, let's just say Lawn Boy, and it said that it was in Wilsonville High School and the vote was no restrictions. Does that mean that it can also be in middle school? Two, if it says no, if there's no restrictions, does that mean even if we only have the book in a high school right now, it could also?
It could if the teacher librarians feel that that's where they'd also like to include the book. Right now, they've decided just to leave it at the high school.
Okay, but it could, if there's no restrictions, that does mean, okay, it could.
If at some point in time, 2, 4, 10, 12 years from now, there's a sense of, there's some 8th graders that may want to read this book, what they would know or come to understand is there isn't a restriction to just keep it at the high school. Right now, there isn't any ask of the librarians to move beyond what you saw there. But the committee didn't feel like they wanted to put that it should have a restriction to just one level.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's my clarifying. And then the other thing that I wanted to ask, and you mentioned this at the beginning, was you said there is a process for parents parents who have concerns that might want to limit their kids from being able to. And so my question and what I want to make sure is this communicated to our parents? I mean, is this something that every single school communicates to parents and parents know that, hey, if there are books that we want to say, and are the books labeled somehow so they know? Or do the parents have to know? I guess what I would love to hear is just more about that, or I feel like our parent community needs to hear more about if they do have concerns about these books, how might they go about expressing those concerns with their librarians to make sure their kids don't end up with books they don't want their books.
I think to do exactly what you've said is if there's a concern, they could talk to their child's teacher, they could talk to the librarian about either the text they're reading in their classroom or a text that they'd have access to at the library, and then work with the teacher and the librarian around either an alternative text or a restriction around that text.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Okay, very good. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. I do have one question about the consent agenda because I'm not seeing in the materials item B. Is it in there? Am I?
That was
missing it?
executive session, what we reviewed, that was presented to
Okay,
you.
great. All right, thank you. All right, so entertaining a motion.
I'll make a motion that we pass the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All right, Vice Chair Thompson moves and Director Sloop seconds, and Ms. Douglas, will you please call the vote?
Director Sloop,
Aye.
Director Taylor,
Aye.
Chair King,
Aye.
Vice Chair Thompson.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, very good. So we are going to move to the public comment portion. And I'm noticing that we have about 7 folks, so that's going to be about maybe 20 to 30 minutes. Do my fellow board members feel good moving forward with that segment, or taking a break first? Because we've been going for like 90 minutes. Take a break. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So just a brief, like 3 to 5 minute kind of bio break, and then we'll come back for the public comment portion. Putting us into recess. All right, I'm going to call this meeting back to order. And we will jump into the public comment portion of the meeting for residents of the district who are speaking to items that are on the agenda. And there were a few folks who signed up on the sheet who did get moved to a different sheet, because what we do is have folks who are speaking to something on the agenda go first, because it's something that we'll be making a decision on. And the folks who are speaking to something that we're not making a decision on go at the end of the evening. So if I don't call your name at the first portion, it's because I'm going to call your name at the second portion. And I am going to just read some guidelines that we follow so that our public comment goes smoothly. And yeah, we thank you for being here and for watching everything that led up to this moment in time. And if you're here to make public comment, you probably should have already signed up on a sheet. So if you need to do that and you haven't done that yet, then let me know. And this is our chance as a board to listen to you and to collect information. It's not a time that we engage in dialogue. So if this is your first time to be here for public comment, what you'll see is us just sitting, listening, sometimes taking notes, but not answering questions or saying anything in return. So this is a chance for you to speak to us. And then we do ask that when you're up at the microphone that you're speaking to us and not like turning and speaking to a camera or to the audience, but really just addressing the board. This is your opportunity to give us information. And we ask that you not single out an individual. If you want to single out an individual, we have a separate process for that, where you can go through a complaint process, and you can access that on the website. You get 3 minutes. The timer goes off. This thing runs so you can see how much time you have left. And then if that's not enough time, then you're welcome to submit your comments in writing. We read everything that comes to us. And we have 45 minutes set aside for public comment. And so everybody gets 3 minutes. And when we get to 45 minutes and public comment period has ended, and if the board determines to extend that time, then they can. Yeah, I think that those are the main things. Am I missing anything? All right, so with that, I will start calling folks up. And I'm going to start with Becca Puskas. I hope I said that right. I know I've said it before.
Thank you, board. Thank you, Superintendent and Dr. Soyson. My name is Becca Puskas. I live in West Linn and I have 3 kids in the district. I am here tonight to talk about reading curriculum. I am a lawyer, so when I learned about the curriculum renewal process, my instinct was to research the rules. I wanted to understand how the process worked and what previous curriculum adoption looked like. I requested records from the Oregon Department of Education and the district, and I have shared those records with all of you. What I found out was that our district has been out of compliance with state law on reading curriculum adoption for at least a decade. Why does this matter? The required process involves a comparison to state criteria that ensure curriculum quality. The required process involves the teachers who implement curriculum and parents whose children learn from it. The process requires approval by you, our elected school board. But our district has not followed the required process. Back in 2013, which was the last curriculum cycle, our district purchased the Lucy Calkins units of study and began implementing it. There is no documentation that the units of study was approved by the school board or that it was formally compared to state standards. Our district continues to use this curriculum, which has been discredited by education experts and abandoned by school districts all over the country in favor of science-based approaches that have been proven to be more effective at teaching kids to read. More recently, in October 2021, ODE, the Oregon Department of Education, adopted a new list of approved reading materials. Many of our neighboring districts adopted something off that list. Portland Public Schools, Lake Oswego, Gresham Barlow, and many more began using their new materials in the fall of 2022. Our district chose to postpone adoption until the fall of 2024. While this is allowed, our district leaders never sought the required school board approval for the postponement, which is what brings us to tonight and the agenda item you have before you. In my view, a postponement is inevitable. A good renewal process takes time. And what choice do we have when we are already behind schedule? At the same time, you cannot give the district a blank check for the next year and a half. According to state law and district policy, you, the school board, are the ultimate decision makers on curriculum adoption. You, the school board, have the authority to guide this process, and you are the ones who will be responsible for the result. I am asking you, the school board, to put some guardrails on the renewal process. The handout I provided has some ideas. Make sure that all teachers have a voice in the process. Start with consideration of the ODE approved materials and understanding the non-negotiable criteria. Hear from experts on the science of reading, maybe even hire a school board approved consultant. Get parent input early and require regular updates to the school board and community over the next year and a half. Please stand up for our kids tonight. Do not approve a postponement without a renewal process that we can all trust.
All right, and we'll move on to Sarah Lawrence.
I'm commenting tonight about reading curriculum postponement and specifically the memo from Dr. Soyson to the school board. As a concerned parent who has been following this process carefully, the memo raises a number of questions. I've listed them in the handout I just gave to you, and I hope that you will ask these questions during your discussion this evening. Number one, the memo references an Oregon Department of Education form for postponing curriculum adoption. However, I do not see a copy of the form provided with this evening's material. According to the postponement rules, the board must approve the district's application to ODE, which means it must approve the information on the form. Have you as a board seen a copy of the form that the district plans to submit to ODE? If not, please request a complete copy of the form before you approve it. I provided a copy of a blank form with my handout, page 2. And as you will see, the form includes the reason for seeking postponement and, importantly, the materials to be used during postponement. It is important that the form that you approve includes accurate information about the materials that are currently being used in our district. So this includes the Lucy Calkins Unit of Study, Fontes and Pinnell, Foundations, which is being piloted at Willamette Primary, and Hagerty, which is being piloted at Boone's Ferry Primary. Number 2, the memo states that district staff initiated collecting data about K-5 readers' progress as a key factor for identifying gaps with current materials and looking for the materials to adopt for the next 7 to 8 school years. So please ask what data has been collected. This data needs to be shared with the board and to the community for transparency. Number 3, the memo references a training process that has already begun involving principals, instructional coordinators, teachers, and learning specialists. So again, please ask, what was the content of the training? Was the training specific to using an already purchased curriculum, or was the training on evidence-based reading instruction to allow our teachers to help differentiate their approach? Number 4, the memo states that district staff proceeded with collecting information about the use of current materials and reviewed research to guide adopting materials. Please ask what information was collected about current materials. What research has been reviewed and by whom? Lastly, the memo describes a renewal process that has already begun. It is important for the school board and the community to understand the investments that the district has already made. Please ask what ELA materials has the district purchased since ODE approved the new curriculum list in October of 2021. Please request documentations of all ELA materials purchased, including curriculum, assessment, and intervention materials. The board and the community deserve clear answers, so I hope that you will ask these questions tonight. Thank you.
All right, I invite up Heather Hall.
My name is Heather Hall. I have 2 daughters. One is in college and one attends Westland High School. I'm also an educator that teaches reading interventions in the David Douglas School District. The topic of reading is very personal to me. I believe all students deserve to learn to read, and I believe as educators, it is our responsibility to teach them. I'm here tonight to discuss the current reading curriculum and the upcoming reading curriculum adoption. I learned several months ago that the Linn-Wilsonville School District did not participate in the statewide curriculum adoption process and is looking to postpone the process again this year. I also learned that the district is using a curriculum that is not on the ODE approved list and is known to be not grounded in the science. Can some kids learn to read using the current curriculum? Sure. But all you have to do is look at your current reading test scores to see it doesn't work for all students. Now, as educators, this was a curriculum a lot of us were taught to use in our teaching programs and even in my reading endorsement program. So I understand why in years past this curriculum might have been used in the district. I personally have used this curriculum in the past, but there is now an abundance of scientific evidence that supports the fact that this is not the best way to teach kids to read. My district did go through the reading adoption process last year and has adopted a curriculum on the ODE list. Even though this is our first year of implementation, I'm already seeing a difference in students' ability to decode words, and with that, an increased confidence in their ability to see themselves as a fluent reader. Even though my district looks very different than West Linn-Wilsonville, the science is not different when it comes to how the brain learns to read. Most districts have used that science to shift to evidence-based curriculums. The email from this district that came out to families about literacy instruction in regards to the article in the Oregonian makes it clear that West Linn-Wilsonville district is choosing to ignore that science. So what does that mean for your students? While you have postponed your reading adoption for potentially 2 years, you have students in your kindergarten, first and second grade classrooms not learning to read. Parents have entrusted you with the responsibility of teaching their children to read. These students deserve to learn to read. So what happens when the curriculum the district is using doesn't work for them? If they are lucky and their parents have the financial ability, they get private tutoring to make up for where their district has failed them. But what happens to those students whose family don't have the financial capabilities of providing private tutoring? The reality is they sit in their classrooms every day falling further behind, and not just decoding the words on the page, but because they are unable to access grade level books, they are losing ground on their vocabulary acquisition and comprehension skills in comparison to their peers that can read. The time to act is now. Put aside your feelings about this curriculum. Commit to doing better for the students that you've been entrusted with. As leaders of this district, you need to educate yourselves about how the brain learns to read and what are the best methods and curriculum to facilitate that growth for our students. You have a choice to make. You're going to choose a curriculum that works for some or for all.
All right, I invite up Yarrow Curry.
My name is Yarrow Curry, and I'm a mom in this district. And before I had kids, I worked in clinical social work. In school, we studied a lot about childhood trauma and its effects on children. Big traumas were the center of our conversations. We weren't talking about the impacts of reading trauma on kids, but now we are. Psychologist Stephen Dykstra says in the past 10 to 15 years, trauma-informed care has opened our eyes to the idea that kids are more deeply affected by low-grade trauma that repeats itself over and over than the big trauma that happens only once and never repeats. No trauma is ever good, but evidence tells us that kids are able to recover with support from those giant traumas, but not as easily from the chronic trauma that wears you down over time. It is more devastating for children in a way that we really didn't understand before. I'm here tonight to talk about this trauma, preventable trauma, the persistent day in, day out trauma kids experience while facing reading difficulties. This type of trauma is very disruptive to a child's development. Think about it. Reading is part of every aspect of school, even the small things like reading the lunch menu. As a mom, I know the act of sending my kids to school, knowing the difficulties they face, has been the single hardest thing I've had to do as a parent. There are things parents can do to help their children combat this trauma, but in the end, you send your kids to school and you feel helpless. As adults, if that daily trauma persisted in your job, eroding your self-confidence, what would you do? For kids, they have no power. In our reading system, kids and families are often blamed for reading failures because our system isn't backed by any supporting evidence to say otherwise. If behavior is communication, what are our children saying about their school experiences? I know, and a lot of the parents speaking up tonight know too, it is heartbreaking. So we are speaking up not only for our kids, but for the kids who are slipping through the cracks, whose parents cannot afford private tutoring, and whose parents are unaware that these struggles aren't the fault of their kids, but rather a broken system. In kindergarten, my daughter said to me, "I don't have a reading mind." This was heart-wrenching to hear, and it also gives us valuable information about how our reading systems can impact kids, even in kindergarten. Many problems in life are not fixable, but this one is. Our district doesn't only need a brand new ELA reading curriculum. It needs a group of well-informed souls to build an equitable reading program from the ground up, starting with the needs of all children to end these cycles of trauma. Thank you.
All right, I'm inviting up Josephine Tang.
My name is Josephine Tang, and I own a home on Hamley Street in West Linn. My husband and I have two boys, one of whom attends school at Bolton Primary. I am an educated working mom with a degree in statistics and an MBA from my time living in Vancouver, BC, and I speak six languages. Professionally, I am a real estate broker. I'm here tonight because I'm concerned about how the district is teaching my son and other kids to read. I'd like to share with you my older son's struggle. In September 2020, he attended kindergarten virtually through the pandemic. He has an IEP. During one of the IEP meetings through Zoom, I attended alone. The district representative labeled my son without a diagnosis. During the meeting, I asked about what are other categories of eligibility. With her over 20 years of experience, she should be able to summarize to me in a few sentences about it. She repeated 4 to 5 times that the category of eligibilities were complicated. I can read and I can do my own research through Google. My son continued to have challenges in reading. Recently, through private diagnosis, my husband and I found out that he has dyslexia. My son's struggle to read is real, like so many other kids in the district. English is not my first language, or even my second language. Growing up in Malaysia, I was taught English for 280 minutes per week. Every class I attended averaged 45 students. Fortunately, I was taught how to read using phonics. I would cut out interesting articles in newspaper and then paste them into my diary. I underlined what I could not understand, and I looked into my dictionary. I learned how to read the words through phonics. In the last 2 weeks, I found out that Linn-Wilsonville is using balanced and Olosi Kalki method to teach my son and other kids to read through guessing methods and not phonics. No wonder why a staggering 61% of third graders are not fully proficient in reading as written by Julia Silverman in the Oregonian. Let's say you're going to a restaurant to order a steak. The waitress said you have 61% of chance getting salmonella. Would you eat the steak? I'm sure you would not. Then why is the district still repeating the same mistake of using a method to guess to read instead of phonics and science-based reading method? Thank you.
All right, and Kara Clark.
Today, I'm handing out a petition that I put on change.org 3 days ago, and we already have 189 people sign without much effort put into it on my part. West Linn-Wilsonville parents call for a district-wide literacy program that aligns with the science of reading. Literacy is a civil right. We are calling for the West Linn-Wilsonville School District to eliminate balanced literacy and adopt structured literacy. Currently, only 56% of third graders are reading at grade level in our district, but we know that 95% of students can learn to read and meet grade level expectations when instruction is aligned with the science of reading. I've enclosed a definition of the science of reading for you. Our ask of the West Linn-Wilsonville School District, number one, curriculum. Adopt an evidence-based K-5 curriculum backed by science that is systematic, cumulative, and explicit with ongoing assessments to guide intervention. This program needs to align with the National Reading Panel's report to include phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. It must also meet Oregon Department of Education requirements. Number two, intervention. Invest more resources to support students reading below grade level. Perform consistent tracking of intervention supports and the resulting student outcomes. This includes assessments. Consistently use assessment tools that identify specific strengths and weaknesses in students' reading abilities, including diagnostic assessments of phonological awareness and sound syllable knowledge decoding. MTSS. Develop a clearly articulated written plan for multi-tiered systems of support. This must include how students are identified at each tier, what interventions are being used, and how student data is being tracked and communicated with parents. Number three, professional development. Provide additional training for all educators in the science of reading that is curriculum agnostic. Start with at least one full day of training for all primary school teachers, learning specialists, and staff delivering reading instruction. Teachers involved in Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention should have access to additional structured literacy training and fair compensation for attendance. Number four, dyslexia. Develop dyslexia awareness and implement effective supports. Up to 20% of students are dyslexic. These students cannot be left behind. All educators in our district must understand what dyslexia is and how to serve the needs of dyslexic students. This includes assessment and early intervention, perform universal yearly dyslexia screenings for all K-2 and any new students entering the district. Ensure that the intervention for dyslexic students at all grade levels is scientifically based with attention to frequency, intensity, duration, and fidelity.
All right, I'm going to invite up Maggie Traverso.
Hi. Hello. I'm going to continue where Kara left off. So under the assessment, we want to, we need progress monitoring and assessments must be science-based, quantifiable, and objective. Ongoing support, provide prescriptive and intensive evidence-based intervention to close the gaps in decoding, encoding, and vocabulary to support reading comprehension. Provide structured writing instruction, ensure access to classroom supports and accommodations in a manner that protects student dignity and allows equal access to grade level content. Number five, transparency. Be accountable to the West Linn-Wilsonville community and to our kids. This includes form a committee of teachers, administrators, and parents to discuss and monitor the interests of the community throughout the upcoming curriculum adoption. Provide progress reports to the community at regular intervals with clear and specific goals and documented outcomes. This must include regular reports on reading assessment data. I think a quote from Kareem Weaver, who is noted in the recent documentary, The Right to Read. His quote is, "The science of reading must not be considered an ideological preference, pedagogical inclination, or inevitable swing of an instructional pendulum. Rather, the research consensus and supporting science must be applied as a matter of equity and civil rights." This is a call to action. Every child deserves to have the right to read. Adopt the science of reading now. Thank you.
All right, and then Tracy Normoyle.
I didn't come prepared with anything, which got me in trouble last time. So or 2 times ago. I think I would just ask that you would each put your business hats on and think when you are reviewing something, whether it's in your business or your Comcast bill, that you would consider alternatives, that you would look at the pros and cons of the system that you have in place, and then also look at what a competing system might provide. One of the things I was concerned about during one of the board work sessions led by Dr. Pryor was that we heard a lot about the existing program, but we didn't hear pros and cons of competing programs. And so when as a business person, that's when we have a request for proposal, we get 3 bids and we look at costs and pros and cons of multiple options. I think that's pretty standard business. I guess I would also ask why we're okay with delaying a core function like reading and the adoption of a new program. We weren't okay with delaying the construction of the new Athey Creek building despite 3x costs in petroleum, lumber, and steel. We still persevered and have that building delivering on time. And yet we are not going to deliver the program for how our children read on time and are seeking a delay. So those are just 2 things that I think we haven't considered. In other news, Ethan, also, this is my son who I've spoken to you about, they won the middle school state basketball championship in Bend. And so we are both working on being word smart and our body smart. And I also wanted to share that we got his most recent IEP updates, and both in all of his curriculum his comprehension, computation, all of his scores have sadly declined since the fall. And so I've reached out to my IEP team because I didn't hear anything directly from them. They just all declined more than 10%. And his scores are not in the 20th percentile for any of the markers. So great, smart, brilliant, delicious little middle schooler in our own district with private tutoring that is still struggling. So I just told you I would keep telling you Ethan's story. So he's a state champion basketball player who's still struggling to read in our district.
All right, that concludes the portion of public comment for folks who are here to speak on something that's on the agenda. Am I missing anybody who thought that they were signed up? I think we're good. Okay, very good. We're going to move on in the evening to the next item, which is the business office, and Dr. Sonley Hughes, you're up.
Good evening, board member and superintendent. So tonight I will present to you the information about the financial information for general fund. This information is as of February 28th of 2023. This information is very much similar to the information that I presented to you in January. The only difference is the estimate ending fund balance for fiscal year 22-23 and the estimate ending fund balance from fiscal year 21-22 carry over into this year. So first, let's go through the general fund revenue. The difference between the year-end revenue projected and the adopted budget is 6.3 million. And that 6.3 million comprise many factors in that. The first factor is the local revenue. Local revenue combine the property tax, common school fund, county school fund, and federal forest fees. That 4 categories combined together is considered local revenue. And property tax played a big portion percentage in the local revenue, which is 41.9 million for the budget, and year-end projected at 42.5 million, which is about over 600,000 more than we budgeted. And this information coming from this chair. So this over 600,000, this source coming from Clackamas and Washington County. And the information that they certify for us, I only use the percentage at 96% to be safe. The second factor is the state school fund. The state school fund budget at 58.7 million. However, due to the increase in the IEP, we projected to have 61.1 million, which is 2.4 million higher. Factor number 3 is the local option tax. The adopted budget at 10.8. We got the certified from Clackamas and Washington County, and I applied 96% at their recommendation, anticipate to bring in 12.4 million, which is about 1.6 million higher than the adopted budget. The factor number 4 combine preschool tuition, investment earning, and extracurriculum activity. When we put the budget together in March, we wasn't factor in any interest earned on the investment. But in 2022, the Federal Reserve increased the interest rates that allowed us to bring in more interest on our investment on the general fund. So that for now, with the estimate, with the current investment that we have, we anticipate to receive 1.9 million, which is extremely higher than what we anticipate in during the budget process. The preschool situation and the extracurricular, we have more preschool students return back to school, and we have more students participate into the extracurricular activity compared to the COVID years. So right now, I anticipate for us to bring in around over 200,000 between the preschool tuition, and the preschool tuition will bring in more, with about 99,000, and then the extracurricular will bring in additional 332,000 compared to the adopted budget. Last but not least, on the other item, anticipate to bring in more revenue than the adopted budget. The service delivery model anticipate to bring in a little bit less. We budget at 2.6 million based on the statement that I received from Clackamas ESD. We about to bring in 2 million, which is 571,000 less than the adopted budget. So overall, for the total revenue, year-end projected, we have 3.6 million higher than the adopted budget at today information. Under the expenditure, we might have some saving in here, but at this time it's still early to have a concrete information to share with the board. So I keep this expenditure number at the same at January report, which is 130 million. So the difference between the total revenue and total expenditure, with the estimate ending fund balance for fiscal year 21-22 bringing over, it gives us the estimate ending fund balance for fiscal year 22-23 at 26.7 million, which is about 21.84% of our total revenue. So with that, I'm open for question.
You go first. You go.
Hey, thank you. Just taking in, it's not my cup, it's not my jam, that, so it takes me a minute. I think just one thing I'd like to ask about, is always vulnerable for me. I feel like I'm outing myself. Under their expenditure, what I'm seeing as a general theme here, I think the overarching theme that I'm seeing is we have a lot more revenue than we anticipated. And there's 4 or 5 reasons in the memo. And thank you for laying those out where I can see how we ended up in that position. One of the things I'm seeing under the expenditure with the associated payroll costs is that stayed very flat. That didn't change. And so I guess I'm wondering why, when we had a lot of additional revenue coming in, my thinking would be that we would see that line item go up, that we would be doing more hiring or that there'd be more movement there. As we could make more moves with this increased revenue coming in. And so when I see that staying flat, I guess I just wonder what happened this past year to keep that so flat.
Yeah. We held several positions posted, but some of them we unable to fill because of the market.
Yeah, we have responded to every need that has been asked for additional staffing. We have approved those positions. We've posted, some we've been able to fill, some we haven't, and that's not uncommon across the state. You've probably heard on the news, some districts that have had, 7, 8 unfilled positions in certain areas like learning specialist or special education. We have unfilled positions in nutrition, paraeducators, custodial and maintenance. We post and hire as quickly as we can. It is what's happening around a staffing shortage, and some of it's movement to other jobs around the state or where there may be higher paying positions. I think all employers are dealing with that, and we're no exception, and it's happening in education. Almost every district, you could talk to their superintendent and their HR, and they've got unfilled positions. So we keep them in the budget because at any point we want to be able to have the money when they come forward and take the job. And that's why we will probably see some adjustment at the end where we had set aside money for someone for a whole year and only ended up with maybe 6 months because of just delay in being able to hire. But we have responded to every ask by principal or supervisor for when they have needed more staff, we've posted. So it's not for a lack of reducing or not wanting to hire. It's just a real challenge right now in the state to
So
hire.
it's fair to assume that I know it's been a hot labor market and that's a theme across all the industries. And we're seeing a shift potentially recently and some shift in projection. Is it fair to assume that in the coming year that we might be able to see, I guess that here's the next headline coming from Chelsea King is I think we have way too much money and we need to spend it. I'm concerned with the ending fund balance. And I know that we have to have 2 months operating fund and we need to have, 4 years ago, it was too low and we needed to work it back up. So I get the fluctuations there. But when I look at this budget today, I think we need to spend that and we need to hire a lot more people and get them into our classrooms and into our schools. And so I guess I'm wondering, what can I anticipate and seeing this reflected, that flat associated payroll line and this big increase in the ending fund balance and the revenue stream? How am I going to see that being addressed in the coming budget cycle?
Yeah, the note I put on the bottom here, the value of the ending fund balance may change at the final audit when we complete the final audits, or also based on the final enrollment, or if we fill all of the position. Also, we have this ending fund balance will help support when we enter into the next biennium, because when we enter into next biennium, the current service level that when the COSA do the survey for 40 school districts, we really need 10.3 billion from the state level. But right now, the governor budget is based on 9.8 billion. And when we build a budget based on 9.8 billion, we are really, we don't have enough revenue to really cover our expenditure compared to the current service level that we needed. So therefore, this carry ending fund balance will help us with the next biennium. It's good when I build a budget for 23-24, you might see some ending fund balance in there, but that ending fund balance really needs for 24-25 as well.
I think as we get into looking at the budget for next year, there will be, we would spend it on the positions that we have if we could, and they're there. But you'll see as we work with the governor's budget, it's far short of the current service level. Some districts are already right now creating reductions for the next biennium. We're not in that position because we have this additional very strong ending fund balance. It's not a sustainable one, but it's one that could carry us through the next 2 years where we would likely not have to make reductions. But I'm getting ahead of myself because we're not in the budget process yet. So when we put our budget committee together, you'll see those documents and then we can make some decisions going forward with that too.
Thank you. I just have one more question, then I'll yield the floor. I've heard that for many, many years now, and I get that. And I appreciate that because I also was around when we did cut programs, after a major economic fall. And so I guess I'm just asking about striking that balance, because what I saw with the governor initial budget is that it was actually a little bit, I think, higher than what folks had, anticipated her coming out of the gates with. So that's just one thing I'll say. I appreciate the delicate balance, but I don't think we're striking it quite yet. I'd like to see the more spending. And also, if I hold that it's hard to hire folks, okay, so it's hard to fill the positions. But then I look at preschool tuition going up and the revenue there, then my brain goes to, why are we even charging for preschool then? If we have a lot of money, I mean, in what ways can we use this money in our communities in a beneficial way if it's not to hire folks? Can we make preschool more accessible, for example?
The preschool tuition, because when I build a budget and I estimate the preschool will bring in 151,000, that 151,000 won't have enough to cover the staff that run the preschool program. So with the additional 99,000 will help offset the FTE. So go into 23-24, whatever tuition that we charge on the preschool tuition, it very much we try to offset the FTE that run to support that program. Because if we reduce the fees preschool tuition, would mean we don't bring in enough money to cover the staff, then other programs have to contribute to support that, and it's not self-sustainable.
Yeah, I do. Thank you for the budget, by the way. I know it's not an easy thing to have to deal with on a regular basis. I guess I have a question about our ending fund balance. If it continues to grow, is there anything that puts us in jeopardy of a penalty or a clawback? Because in the university system, if you don't use your budget, the state says, then you don't need that much. And they claw it back and they give it to other places that are falling short so that we're not building up this extra millions and millions and millions of dollars while others are falling short in neighboring districts. So is there a chance that there's a clawback on our budget?
No, it won't. And also this is for the last 2 years, it's because we received the support from the ESSER grant. That's why we have that bubble. But if we look at, and I can share with you the graph and the actual ending fund balance that we have for the last 10 years, we stay between 9 million to maximum 12 million. That's the average ending fund balance that our district have. So this is very like last year and this year at the bubble because of the ESSER support.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I guess that was my next question too, is when you're doing your budget, is there typically a corridor? Like if I think about Pat and Remo, when they forecast a project, sometimes it comes out way over budget. But Remo does a good job of explaining that, you know, we get nervous because this thing is going to cost so much. And he says, well, you know, the cost that we forecasted will more than likely come down. Is there typically a corridor or a percentage that you know that you've over forecasted and that 26 million is going to back up? Because we're going from 16 million, right, to 26 million. That's a huge jump for ending fund balance. And does it mean that we should actually forecast the true cost associated with preschool versus not forecasting what it truly costs and then supplementing from other areas? So should we show a bigger deficit for preschool so that the impact of what we're really facing is shown on here versus not, and then we're pillaging from somewhere else to make it right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If I might just add, I know we kind of got, when we give information, we get hung up maybe on a detail, but I think the larger changes here actually came from adjustments from ODE. And those are parts that are going to be variable throughout the year. That's the challenge with a school budget, different than a home budget or a business budget, is because all 197 school districts have to share this one pot of money. And as there's variations across, everybody kind of adjusts with sharing this amount. And as enrollment shifts or local property taxes come in differently, then the state adjusts. Sometimes they'll come to us and say, we gave you too much on the front end, we're now going to take some away. Or or what you reported was too conservative, you actually had more students, and so we're going to adjust again. So it's really challenging being a CFO of a school district because you're really not in control of an isolated budget. It's contingent on 197 budgets all working together. And so this back and forth with ODE is kind of this dance that happens. The other part is predicting, for example, the taxes that will come in. We get recommendations to only anticipate 96%. If our community does a tax return rate at 98%, then that's good for us. We get some more of that local revenue in, but it could be 96. So the caution is always a lot of people defer their taxes or don't pay their taxes. Things can happen in a volatile economy. So there are ways we can take a look and say, maybe we should be less conservative and go ahead with 98% and get a little closer to what we end up actually taking in from local taxes for our community. But the advice we always get from tax assessors and county is to stick with the 96%. So that's where you're seeing one of the adjustments there. Preschool number is relatively small compared to those big ones. The other is we don't know who's going to move in and who's going to, when you have ADM and the ADMW is weighted. So students who have additional service needs, whether they're on an IEP or they have language support, or they're students that are their families are working through poverty, the state does adjust and weight that amount accordingly. And that can fluctuate with people moving in or moving out or students on an IEP or not. And so that was one of the adjustments as well, is when the state was able to verify our number, they went ahead and gave us the revenue to match that. And they do that through the student counts that we submit with various reports. They have to wait till it's verified. They don't just take our word for it. They have to kind of see the numbers come in. So those were the bigger factors that created that difference than the tuition one. We're sharing you where we did see a difference, but it's not as big as the other ones. And those are ones that we don't know where we're going to land sometimes in terms of sharing that, what's called the common school state fund with everybody else. So it's challenging. And I guess I would say when we get into that budget, looking at the budget for next year, and we see where does the 9.8 put us as a school district, likely you'll see that we won't have this large of ending fund balance in the subsequent years, but it will get us through some big moves for our district. We're opening a new high school, got to staff that. We've got some costs there we don't know yet. So there are some projects that are unique to us that could benefit having a little more cushion and not as tight of a school year going, especially into next year.
Okay, my
But I'm
last,
getting ahead of myself because this is really the conversation for the budget committee when we have those documents.
Right.
So
I've been trying to get to a budget committee meeting for forever, and I just can't fit it into my schedule. But I guess from what I just heard there, if I'm not a part of the board and I'm listening as a parent, when I hear the state is rewarding more money for kids that are getting on IEPs and 504s, and our 504 and IEP percentage is going up, but we are not hiring the staff to support that because of the difficulties. To me, it feels like the perception could be that we're making money off of poor performance. So that is where I get a little nervous on hearing that statement, which I know that our hearts are not there. I'm just saying that there are a lot of people in this community who might take that way.
yeah,
And so I just want to make sure that we're being mindful as to what the extra money, and we're talking about more structures and more buildings and more this and that, which we will need to staff Riverside, that maybe we turn our hearts towards some of the other needs of the student.
And I want to be real clear that our hearts are there and our actions are there. We're not doing what you've maybe speculated that might suppose out there. So I want to be really clear that as we've increased with student need, we've hired staff as well. And in fact, some people would look at our district to say, you're staffed well beyond what even some other districts may have. So we've increased our special education staff each year accordingly. So that speculation of we're making money off of poor performance is not true for us.
I get it.
So I want to be real
But
clear.
we should control that narrative is my point, because if not, left to the public to come up with their own conclusion, my email box is going to fill up.
Yeah.
That's
So,
what I do. So
and that's why it's important to get
Right.
accurate information and not speculation and
thank you.
yeah.
So one more reminder that as of, it's about August, ODE will make the adjustments based on our actual ADMW and local revenue. So this is just a reminder because I haven't factored this in my report yet. Based on the information that we received from ODEs on 21-22 record, the number, the dollar amount that I report to the ODEs on the property tax in 21-22 is less than the actual property tax that we receive. So I report 40.6 million, we receive 40.8. So that is 144,000 more. And then on transportation, we report 6 million and the actual expenditure is 5.9 million. The difference is 84,000. So the combined property tax and transportation is 228,000. And that is the dollar amount that possible the district has to reimburse back to ODE because they overpay us in 21-22.
All right, it looks like Vice Chair Thompson has questions.
So I just want to, just as we talk, and I feel like when I first came on the board, Chelsea, correct me if I'm wrong, 4 years ago, is that when we were having more, I feel like our ending fund balance was more around the 5%. And so what has happened is that then we got into COVID and that's when we got our ESSER money. So is part of what we're seeing with these larger ending fund balances, because we still have that benefit, that padding from some of our ESSER money. And that, and we received 3 different, right? The ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3. So just my assumption is that is why we still have some of that ending fund balance is so much larger, and perhaps why we have that caution of, hey, we've maybe expanded some programs thanks to ESSER money, and we want to make sure that we're able to keep them. So I'm just asking, is that part of it? Does that play into our larger ending fund balance as well?
Yeah, that it's been increasingly challenging for school districts the last few years because there were federal grants that came all of a sudden. Money we budgeted for example, summer school, and then we would hear, for example, last year, right before summer, that the state was giving us some money. So then we had a matching situation but we had set aside that money. So as these grants roll in, whether they're from state or federal to support, which is what we want, we had allocated money towards that only to receive grants and support. So that's some of the factor. And then combined with just staffing shortage, setting aside to fill all these positions and not being able to, or filling and then folks leave. So that impacts benefits, it impacts salary. And we're just not seeing that output that we had set aside for. So there's a combination of those things. There are some districts that haven't spent, they are still rolling out their ESSER funds because they have several years to use them. So they have that bubble in essence as well, and have a certain amount of time to spend out their funds. We went ahead and allocated it right away to those things like Florida Virtual, if you remember, in some of our online programs and some work that we were doing and recouped that, which then created some benefit in some other areas for us that we were going to spend the money. We were going to use some general budget for that and ended up that the ESSER money covered for that. So we're seeing the bubble here where some other districts are just extending out their ESSER funds and haven't spent it all yet. So districts are at different places depending on how they've worked through those state and federal grants.
And the ESSER money we recorded under the special revenue fund, which is Fund 200, different separate from Fund 100. So for other school districts that they allocate their ESSER money throughout 3 years or 4 years, then you won't see the effect much in the general fund because the spending coming out of their grant was a special revenue. When we receive the ESSER money, we decide to utilize that right away. That's why we shift a lot of expenditure, especially expenditure related to COVID, to the ESSER grant. So that's why we free up the money in the general fund, and that's why it creates a big bubble.
All right, I'm gonna move us on. And we're getting a little behind schedule here. So if everybody is good. Thank you, Dr. Sonley Hughes. And we'll go to the Department of Teaching and Learning, Dr. Barb Soyson, with the ODE requirement to approve postponement.
So first, want to begin by saying that I think I speak for all of my colleagues in teaching and learning to just say that we believe our parents and we believe in the urgency with children who are struggling to read and what it means for us in improving practices and ensuring practices are in place so we can adopt new curriculum that really is able to be used. We also know we have really strong teachers. So this is not about our teachers. Our teachers are asking, as you know, many of us, I actually was in the group that learned to teach phonics. That just shows I've been in the profession for a while, but there has been a whole span of years when what you learned in your education program was not necessarily looking at those 5 components of reading. So our teachers are asking for not only to pilot a specific program, but those teachers who did that got some training, because we know, especially with this type of curriculum, that you can't just have things you take out of a box. You have to know, what does it mean to have a multisensory approach to learning phonics as opposed to just practicing phonics? So just wanted to preface with that there is no disagreement among us, and I'm speaking for my colleagues and for our principals, that we believe what you have heard, and that's where our sense of urgency is. And a postponement does not mean that there isn't a sense of urgency. The postponement is an acknowledgement that our school district does not have new materials in place in the 2022-23 school year. We did start the process in 2021, last year, when we returned to school, with the idea that we needed to see where our students were. And we did start then with training in using assessment to look at students' reading progress. And this renewal of instructional practices right now that started is going on now. It's not as if we are waiting. And when we say that we're asking for a postponement, it means that the materials will be in place by fall 2024. Doesn't mean that they won't be in place sooner, but that's just in speaking to ODE guidelines, what a postponement means. And regarding the form that we turn in when I'm kind of describing what we're doing here, that's what goes on the form, because it's a form that just asks, what are you asking for and why? And then it asks mainly that a school board knows and approves that we're asking for that. So what this is saying is, yes, we did not have materials in place at the beginning of this school year. And the latest that we will have materials in place will be fall 2024. However, as I said, that urgency to make sure there's consistent, systematic instruction in what we see as the 5 components of reading, and I think you heard them this evening. There's no disagreement about that, and that determines the kinds of programs you look for. And it's phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. That is the focus. We are working with that now. We work with that when we observe in classrooms. So just wanted to begin with saying what a postponement is and what a postponement is not. So then the question is, why a postponement? You know, why? And if you were going to get one, why isn't it already in place? And when we started the renewal process in 2021, we required that we use the same assessment. And because if you're going to look at systematically working with instruction, you have to be measuring things in the same way. But using these assessments, not ones where you just go online and take an assessment, but ones where teachers read with students and know what to listen for, and then take action steps right away to look at what does this child need more of, or in some cases, what is this child ready to do next? They can already do this. That takes significant training. And we did look at that. And the area of fluency, when you're doing this reading, that's kind of your signpost when you don't hear fluency, that phonics and phonemic awareness are the areas where you need to do further instruction. So that did start, and we were doing that last school year. At the time, some of us in this position, we are aware of ODE guidelines. We are aware of adoptions, and talked with our colleagues at ODE and saying, you know, are we on track? We also, in our district, we have colleagues in other districts and belong to groups where we look at teaching and learning topics together. And we know, and we realize then, we are not the quickest to adopt. And the reason for that is we do believe here in adoptions that you have to listen to those using the materials. And you not only need to listen and ask them what they want, but they have to participate in the process. Well, in a K-5 program, that's a lot of teachers. That's all your teachers. So we do have processes that we have used. We used it in mathematics, where we have a larger group that I think some of the school districts you have heard mentioned involve in their process. And we usually do things like take a half a day and get substitutes with that group. Then we have set pieces for gathering information they take and they go back to the rest of their colleagues to share, to gather, maybe to work through something and look at it. And you space those pieces out. That's not a real quick process. Also, in a year when you might be needing a lot of substitutes and you still might be having a lot of absenteeism, you really have to think about the effects on children when you pull those teachers out of the classroom. We do a lot of our professional learning, compensated time after school hours, but we're talking about 90 minutes at a time. So again, when we look at a form for ODE and we look at the reason why, we did get slowed down more than we thought. And we also, though, talked about that with our colleagues at ODE. And we weren't the only school district in that situation. And initially, the idea was just see, because our ODE is not looking to, penalize school districts. They're looking to work with us. So we operated with that assumption because, again, those of us here did call, were in contact and in consult with them, as the school year progressed, as we were seeing this slow down. The other thing, just to clarify, is we always use the state lists. They've already done a lot of the work with the rubrics of the same things we're looking for, which start with the standards. They start with access to materials for all students. They are, especially in the last 10 years, much more equity driven in terms of the learning needs of all students. So for my colleagues and myself, there's no reason that we would not look at that as, unless there was something there we could not find, that's what we do. The adoption we did right before the pandemic, for example, was high school mathematics. And of course, those materials are off the ODE list for high school mathematics. So that said, then in this February, which is why we're sitting here now on March 13th, ODE made courtesy calls, and the one that I received said, we are calling all of the districts where initially there was not a postponement submitted. We are saying, go ahead and do that now, and you are compliant with Division 22. Initially, in contacting ODE early this fall, because I reported to you about Division 22 in November, that was the question. And because it was understanding that things were taking longer, that's where it was still, as you recall, in Division 22, we don't hesitate if we're not meeting something not to check the box. We did that with physical education this year in our district, as you may recall. So this would have been another one. There's no hesitation to do that, but that's kind of the reason that we're sitting here tonight. And we had hoped to have this as soon as, I received the phone call in February. So that's just kind of the short, and I'm anticipating that you will have questions, but that's why we are where we are. But it also has nothing to do with the urgency, the use of ODE lists, and the training that we are planning, that we are doing, that we are working with our teachers now. And again, as a reminder, in looking at a postponement, all you're doing is acknowledging that materials were not adopted by fall 2022, and you are giving those on staff directions that you have to have this in place by 2024. That said, there can still be discussion with staff about presenting the new curriculum materials to the board earlier. than February 2024. If that makes sense, that's separate than an actual postponement. So just last slide. So just to clarify, when we're talking about reading and the things that are guiding us in looking at materials, these are the statements, and I believe that Dr. Ludwig has sent this to you. We shared this with our PTA parents and principals, K-8, recently. And I'm not going to read it all, but you'll see that these statements didn't just come up now, but these are the overarching, really large beliefs. Last thing I should mention, then we look at all teacher voices being involved in a process. We never run a materials process in the school district without having our special education teachers and our ELD teachers as part of that. So when we say teachers, that's what we mean, because we know, as it indicates there, that we need to sometimes have some different materials and more intensive instruction, and sometimes different instruction with students. We have all, some, and few, and those are other pieces that fit together when we look at materials. So I think I'll stop there. I'm assuming that there would be some questions.
Go ahead, Dr. Slope.
Yeah. Okay, so in regards to the form, it says that the application, submittal of the application needs to be approved by the board. So do you have that form? Like, I have the form, like I printed it off, and I think Sarah also included that. But have you filled out the form?
Yes, but you can't do anything with it. You can't push send until you have the date of the school board adoption.
So that has not been submitted.
We can't. They don't want it until they know, because that's the purpose of the form. It's an acknowledgement that publicly we have stated that we did not have materials in place in fall 2022, and that our school board knows that and approves that we are requesting a postponement. So it's an electronic form, and you can fill it out, but it just stays. You can't, it doesn't work, or it's not accepted until that date, because you'll see the box is there for the date of board approval.
Yeah, date postponement request was approved by the local school board. So it's hard for me to approve something that I don't know what I'm approving, unless I actually see like this filled out, like that it would indeed include identify materials to be used during the postponement, everything that's being listed, checking the box below. The district is providing assurance that this postponement causing an out-of-cycle purchase will not delay future purchases in other subject areas. And then the other question was reasons for seeking postponement, content area. So again, is there a way that you could type up the form and allow the board to see what those answers will be?
Yeah, of course. And I was attempting to kind of outline that tonight. First of all, we use our current materials till we have new materials. So you don't buy anything else. So we would list the materials that we are currently using for that question. The reasons are that we found, and it's kind of in those points on the first two slides, is that we started the adoption in 2021. We found that we were not able to proceed with the groups that we have, that we did the training then, and that it was taking more time, and we did not have the bandwidth to have the groups of teachers out of classrooms. So that's what will go in writing. Certainly, if you want to see that, you can. But I would be writing what you saw on the slides.
I'm wondering, because we did that January work session where we shared with you about our current program and the materials, I think you wouldn't be surprised to see, Lucy Calkins' units of reading and Fontes of Pinot. We kind of shared a couple different venues what our current materials are. So that part shouldn't hopefully be surprising. Or
would it include the pilot from Willamette, the foundations that was being used for the?
That was purchased on such a small scale
Yeah.
that it would be unfair to say that children were being provided, a significant number of children were being provided with learning with that. So that part of doing that is to inform us of, a small scale example, but there was nothing purchased on a large scale for that.
Okay.
And that question of clarification, Director Sloop, is that
Yeah, I was just going off the Oregon Department of Education, Chapter 581, Division 22. And so when it says approval of the application and the date of such approval, because I know that, there's not a perfect curriculum out there, whether it's what we are currently using or just another phonics. And the old adage is, if you continue to do the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome, that's kind of the definition of insanity. And Dr. Ledwood, you would know me. I tend to look for data and research. And so I pulled up, I would like to get the benchmark assessments and the AIMSWEB for all of the board to see before moving forward, so we know like where we're at, what the data is showing. So I pulled up, the ODE assessments for all of our schools, and I would like to find something that addresses our children with reading disabilities, but also our second language learners, our English second language learners, because what we're providing is not the right fit for them. It's not an inclusive practice, culturally receptive for them. And as I said earlier, Boone's Ferry, they're at 37%. Their Latino population was 12% literacy. Lowry's 59%. The Latino population's 31% literacy. Sunset 69%, their Latino population is 47%. And then Stafford is 63% proficient at literacy, but, and they have like one student that's in the Latino population. And then when I was doing my tour last week, they were saying, Melissa was saying that, that could be like a pilot program moving forward to show the other districts of how they're doing the large groups, and then the teachers would go off with a smaller group. And I thought, oh, okay. But then I realized, is that going to work? Is that whatever they're doing, is that diverse enough to work in Wilsonville, where, Stafford has one Latino student, but then Wilsonville, a lot of our, schools have more of a diverse population. So I would like to make sure that when we are looking at this, that we have some parameters in place, and that would be, Lucy Calkins, Fountas and Pinnell is not approved by ODE. I would hope that the district would consider something that is on that approved list. My other concern is Governor Kotek is talking about completely revamping our literacy program with a solid focus on heavy phonics, and Lucy Calkins and Fountas and Pinnell is not known for that. Not only that, but it's not approved. So I would like to have those parameters, and I would like to hear from other phonics experts, because in the past, Lake Oswego, Westland were always neck and neck. I mean, they were. And so I was looking, they've done phonics for the last 5 years and they've had a constant improvement. And they had a fall assessment on or above grade level standards, and it was 54% in the fall and has jumped up to 71% for their winter assessment. And below grade level in the fall, there was 36% of their students. And winter was 20, at the latest assessment, it was just 25% of their students were below grade level. And then I went and went on ODE, and I pulled our at a glance pre-COVID for West Linn-Wilsonville. And I would say that we're not strong in third grade language arts. Back in 2017, 2018, we were 66% literacy. And in 2018, 2019, we were 69%. So I still feel that we're missing the mark on finding a program that fits the majority of our students to give them the ability to succeed. Because I do feel that I read one of those articles that you sent me, and it said, you should acknowledge and support that the greatest avenue to reading, and that for all students, is access to books and reading in their homes, schools, and community. And I kind of have to disagree with that, because I had a struggling reader myself. We would get those scholastic little brochures, and he would get all excited, and we would order those books. We would go to the library. It didn't matter how many books I had at home. He struggled, and I gave him all the access he wanted, and he struggled to read. And I just feel that we need to find something that addresses the phonics component in the beginning in our key younger grades, because that is the basis for learning anything, whether it's science, math with story problems, social studies. It all starts with literacy. And we can do better. I mean, I don't want to continue with the data that I have, but as I said, Lake Oswego, they're doing a phonics program. It's into reading, but they also have letters training. They've been doing this for 5 years. And, they have a 7% Latino population. We have more than that, but, they are getting it. And same with their children that have reading disabilities, as far as dyslexia or some other hidden reading disability.
Well, appreciate that. And I think you started by talking about Ames Web data and benchmark data. And one of the things that might be useful is to look at the percentages that you see in the at a glance. That's from the OSAS reports. That's not looking at phonics. It's looking at how do students put all of that together. So of course, the component of phonics is very, very important. But there are some things in breaking that down, and that's exactly what in a process we're doing. I think when we talked and you at the work study session and looking at the renewal process was at the end, and there was language around finding the gaps. And that's exactly what I hear you talking about and acknowledging that. And I know that in articles, there isn't any acknowledgement that having children have lots of books is a way to teach reading. I mean, that's the way that you want to have that environment, with a literacy rich classroom, and you want to have reading materials, but that is no substitute for instruction. The other thing that we really want to think about is the materials are the materials, and the HMH into reading, Houghton Mifflin Harcourt Grace, that is not a phonics program. That's a comprehensive reading program. And what a number of districts are doing is from the ODE list, there's some comprehensive reading programs. And then you look at what do we need specifically? And it's a supplement because more and more in different subject areas, there's not just one packaged material that does it all. So that's the direction that, that we are looking. You want them to fit together, and you mostly want to look at instructional practices and make sure that teachers have some training with teaching phonics regardless of what you buy. So that's the direction that we are going. And again, what you see there on the slide is really what captures what we believe. And you notice it does talk about teaching phonics. It does talk about that you need to have some other experiences for students who need more support. So that's what we are looking for. We can say that one thing in our district with inclusive practices and inclusive instruction and our approach to ELD and to working with students with IEPs, we really look at those instructional practices that you have to adapt for students to use curriculum. So you don't just give them a different thing to use. The teachers have to know how to use it. When we do a thorough renewal process, they're involved in that. So, if you have a student who has a specific reading need 1 year, but not for another 2 years, well, if you've been part of, this is what we are doing to learn to teach reading. Again, that's not necessarily the fastest way to do it, but that is, the reason that it has taken us a bit longer. And we have run these processes before in the past when we have been able to take groups of teachers, for half days at a time. And that was not the reality in the 2021-22 school year.
Yeah, and I just want to say this is not meant anything against the teachers. Every classroom that I was observing, our teachers rock. I mean, they are amazing. And I think that we as a board, the best thing we can do is just give them the training and the right tools. And I want to make sure moving forward that that's also a part of it. But I would like to make sure that we're giving them a free, open, no judgment ability, access to give us any input that they want on what they're thinking, what their ideas are, and what their choices are moving forward with this curriculum adoption.
And I think, can I just say something to that? I mean, that's exactly why our process involves more teachers. There are some districts where it's a small group that only deal with that adoption process. And we wanted to involve more teachers for exactly what you're describing. So I appreciate hearing that. But that means the small group goes back to their school, shares with the larger group gets to be involved, gives feedback back to the representative group that comes back. So that back and forth recursive process is what involves more teachers to be able to have that voice instead of, a small group of teachers went away for 3 days. They got to look at stuff. They came back and decided something. And that's what we ended up with. That would be quick. Might get you something sooner than later. But what ends up happening is folks miss out on the understanding of why something was selected and getting to have a voice, which is exactly what you're describing. And when the process is thorough and involves more people, then there's more ownership of the materials, of the training, and a collective sense of doing that work together and understanding its articulation, grade K-5, and how we're all using the materials, and there's more buy-in because more teachers have been able to be a part of that process and have that voice. So I appreciate hearing you describe that because that has been our district's philosophy, and that's why we call it a renewal and not just an adoption of some materials, very quickly, over and done. But a renewal involves looking at the research, looking at what we're currently doing, looking at the data, where are the gaps, getting more teachers involved in the process, then looking at materials, having them try some out, giving feedback, narrowing down that list until we get the one that when we come to the board and you ask us, is this the one that the teachers have determined is the best in order for them to be the best reading teachers, we can unequivocally say yes. We had a very thorough process. And most of the teachers want, these materials because they've all had access and a voice in that process. Yeah. Did you want to?
Go ahead.
So I did email you before the meeting just to say that I was going to ask this, but I know one of the questions that has come up was just when the current ELA curriculum was adopted and approved by the school board. And if we don't have documentation of it, then what was the process that it came to be adopted? So just that interest in how did Lucy Calkins that we currently use come to be adopted? And so I just think that would be helpful for the public to hear kind of the process and understanding behind that. And that's just my first question. And then I have a couple more later, but yeah.
So the Lucy Calkins materials, there were Lucy Calkins units of writing and Lucy Calkins units of reading. And those were started to being phased in say 2011, where those working with curriculum, at the time were finding that they were starting to, it was bigger than a pilot, work with them in some of the schools, and then they were gradually added. And we do not have record of this coming before the board for a presentation of a process. And we believe that was because it wasn't something that just happened, in one set. Like we have a defined process for the reading renewal right now, but that these materials were added. Prior to that, my understanding was there was sort of not a set of materials, but it was a process called the Daily Five, where there were practices taught in literacy. So in bringing those in, in bringing the writing units in and then the reading units, it just was something that was more of a replacement, a gradual replacement, as opposed to a wholesale adoption. And I know that being asked, and when there were, even asks for public records request, we didn't want to be disingenuous, but to say that's what our understanding was that happened. And I know when, for example, some of us who are now working with curriculum in 2014 and 15 started working with professional learning, intensive professional learning around using those materials. So that's a process that was or was not in place at that time. And I appreciate that because I think there isn't anything that anyone wants to hide here. That's what happened. But I do, we understand that if you think, well, what happened with the last adoption, and that wasn't on the list. And I think that also carries over to at the work session where the request was explain what you're using now and how you're using it. If that was, construed as, and this is what we want to keep doing just the way we are, that's not correct. I mean, this was leading into, so now what are some elements of our practice that we would keep? And those would tend to be in the practice, not the materials. And part of that would be, yes, we will keep rich classroom libraries. We'll have decodable books in them more systematically, would be just one example of that, but it has nothing to do with keeping the specific materials.
Follow-up questions. So my first follow-up question is were there different guidelines from the state at that time as required? Like, so now we know that we as a board are supposed to adopt curriculum. So was it different at that were the state guidelines different? That's one of my questions. And then my other question is, do we have record at least of, so you said we phased in Lucy Calkins, but do we have record at least of looking at Lucy Calkins and comparing it to, okay, these are the state standards, these are the state expectations, and this is how this curriculum fulfills that? So those are my two follow-up questions.
So the first one, yes, there is and was an alignment with the state and with the Common Core, which came into place in 2010. And so I don't know that it was that started it first, but there definitely was an alignment because we ran some of our own writing assessments in years after that were definitely based on state standards, and the state standards are definitely within that curriculum. So that was, that was checked. I wouldn't say that the state of Oregon had different guidelines for that adoption, but they, I don't think it was as formalized, the processes that they used. Now, if you go and you look at instructional materials, you'll see that there are those 4 specific documents that outline both the timeline, and then they outline, the processes for looking at materials. So I wouldn't say it wasn't there, but it's definitely formalized. It's definitely more a clear part of Division 22. And I think there's acknowledgement that there will continue to be more clarity and tightness of that process. But they were still there. You still, had a state approved list in, I'm thinking back to when I was not in this position, but, I remember it in like 2008, you would have state approved lists, as most states do.
Okay. I'm sorry, I do have one more question, and then, yeah. And then my last question for right now is, so when I was looking at, just kind of on the Oregon Department of Education and doing my own kind of, learning, I came upon a page that said instructional materials adoption schedule. And it was revised in June 2018. No, I'm sorry, it was revised in June 2020, probably with, after the pandemic and knowing that kind of pushing things off, but it has one column that says revised Oregon State review cycle, and it lists all of the different subject areas: mathematics, science, health and physical education, social sciences, et cetera. And then it says the next column is for when it needs to be for use in classrooms by fall. So when I look at that and I look at the ELA curriculum, it says that it needs to be in classrooms by fall of 2022. And I know that's what we're addressing right now, asking for that postponement. But as I go down the list, then I look and it says mathematics for use in classrooms by 2023, which would be next fall. And then science for use in classrooms 2024. And so I guess when I see that, I wonder, we haven't started the mathematics process. I just want to make sure we're not.
Right. Well, we did, but mathematics we started because the other thing now, when the state of Oregon revised this, you can't assume that every district is on the same 7 or 8 year cycle. So for example, we had purchased K-5 materials. The ones that were purchased the longest ago was high school. So before the pandemic, we did in 2019-20, we adopted high school math. We are now doing middle school math, and we will then be looking at, then we'll come up for K-5 again last, but we are going to be adopting the reading materials first, because one of the unique things in K-5 is those teachers teach everything. So when you adopt for social studies, science, ELA, math, and you take groups of teachers, you have to be, thoughtful of how much they can do at one time. But we will be following the English language arts adoption in reading with K-5 mathematics again, but K-5 was the last group to get new materials before. So that is a reason that ODE also recognizes and has this postponement, because sometimes it's for finances, sometimes it's for things like, well, our materials were, before you put out this new timeline, we had just adopted those materials.
So does that mean we'll have to fill out a postponement form for math for next fall? Because we won't, because it says for use in classrooms by fall. So we would then fill out a postponement and say,
And but then
this-
get on it, because
this is why we postponed.
now that they made this new timeline, you have to kind of get yourself back on cycle,
okay, thank you.
because it was,
All right,
yeah.
thank you. Okay. Just two questions. One might be pretty straightforward and one might be a little harder. And so recognizing that when during the renewal process, do we assume or do we have the assumption in place that we will be selecting when something is proposed to the board here in about a year, 14 months, whatever, that the curriculum would be from an ODE approved list? Is that a safe assumption? Okay. That's the easy question. And then the other question is just sort of a curiosity, because I have a lot of trust in you, Dr. Soyson, and your process. And I know you're a consummate professional and expert here. And I'm just curious if you could speak to just one or two things maybe that you feel like your team has learned so far as you've been embarked in this process, like the past few months or, 6-9 months. Can you just tell me something you're already seeing?
Well, we are seeing that we do have a wide range of teacher experience with teaching phonics. I think that was the other thing that, we just realized, that when we say, yes, I'm teaching phonics, are we using materials or are we actually teaching phonics? We are also seeing that some of our, I guess, there's some data that it's not all the same leading up to the percentages on OSAS. We've seen in MAP, NWEA MAP, we've seen some growth strength, there's achievement and then there's growth. And we see that in some grade levels, because you also want to look at progress students are making, not just benchmarks sort of thing. So those are, two big patterns that we've seen. We've seen that I think we do have, and that's what we try to grow. We actually try to grow some common interest. And I think we've seen that most of our teachers would welcome a change and some shifts in not necessarily what we call the reading workshop, but some materials. We've also seen that there's some parts of, when we talk about workshop, we talk about some routines where there's some direct instruction from the teacher. And then students have some times when they work in different small groups where you can do some work with groups as they need specific support. You can do some reinforcement. And we've seen that when that is really in place, it really supports the use of curriculum, because there's something direct, everyone gets it, that's exactly, clear to students, but then it's not just practice, there's some actual group work that is very structured. So we have seen that when that is in place, students tend to do better, with reading. So those are three big ones. I could go on.
Ludwig, I see that you have your hand on your mic. Should I continue with what I'm about to say, or you? Okay. So I think we've been discussing this for quite some time, and we're about an hour behind what we thought we would be at, and we still have quite a bit of public comment to go. So I think it could be helpful to get a motion on the table, and then we can see if there's any further discussion before we call a vote. I move to approve the postponement of the district's K-5 literacy renewal from implementation during the fall of 2022 to implementation during the fall of 2024 per Oregon Department of Education's requirement.
I'll second it.
All right, so we've got the motion and the second, and is there any further discussion before we call the vote?
I guess I have a question and a comment. I'll start with my comment. I reached out to a teacher in the district that I have a relationship with, just to get kind of an unfiltered view of what is currently being taught versus the things that we hear, out there. And I just wanted to have a better understanding of what their lived experience was versus what all the science and the books and everything else says. And some of the talking points that that came back were good, bad. I don't think they were good or bad. I mean, they and some of the positive things that that I heard from this individual was that the writing is excellent with Lucy Calkins, the fiction versus nonfictions, and the progress that she was seeing in her students. Love the concept of the freedom that they have to evaluate students and make adjustments along the way, even using this program. So they, as a teacher, they're monitoring each kid that they are teaching to see their progress. Felt it was a little wordy. Lucy Calkins could be a little wordy and a little cumbersome at times, but they're also always supplementing to bring in the things that maybe were their shortfalls. Sound like there's some materials coming for K-5, but not at the upper levels. So would have liked to seen some of this things that we're talking about with K-5 be offered at the upper levels with middle school and high school for kids that didn't have the opportunity to have access to some of the new stuff that you put in place. Grade 4, 5, I believe no phonics, but district is adding materials for that, is my understanding. And which she was explaining to me, she always goes back, what's the purpose of reading, right? And so in any curriculum, no matter if it's changed or it's the existing curriculum, she tends to fall back on what's the purpose of learning how to read to help influence, because no matter what you offer a teacher, they're not going to teach it from page 1 to page 110 the way that it's laid out. They're probably going to use their favorite 20 pages of it, and then they're going to get supplemental documents, and then they're going to add the art to the science, what makes them what they are, right? Which is why every time we ask students about what their experience is in school, they always name their favorite teacher. And I like him or her because they do this and they make me feel like I belong, or they help me when I feel like I'm failing, or they reward me when I feel like I'm succeeding. So I think teachers are doing an amazing job, and I think they'll do an amazing job with no matter what they're given to deal with. But one of the other things that came back was, I said, well, if your program was to be just ripped out of your hands and you had to have a whole new thing to start teaching, how would that impact you? And the response was that that would be more harmful than good. And I was surprised to hear that, because what I was also surprised to hear was that her reflection on her history in this district was that our district tends to throw things in there, and then the teachers are scrambling to adapt to learn these new things every 2 years. And if we were to do that again, it would be this continuance of the district just making the teachers jump through hoops. And now she said she's already planning 8 subjects, SEL, Chinese, 2 times a week. And so they're so short on time that when are they going to have time to be trained and learn something new in such a short period of time? Right. And so that had a big impact on me sitting here tonight and having to make a decision, because as much as I want to rush this thing forward, and I don't know how I'm voting. I'm torn on this whole thing. I have to be honest. But the fact that they don't have any time to do this with 8 subjects, it does make me, and she made it clear that she doesn't speak on behalf of all teachers, right? This was just her lived experience. And so what I know of her, she's been here a long time. She's a straight shooter. And the fact that she gave it to me the way I wanted to hear it was like I was cheering down the street when I was driving here. I was like, oh, finally, somebody who's not afraid to talk in front of administration, someone who's not afraid that if they speak, then they're gonna, tick off one of their colleagues. And so just to get it that way. But she also ended with saying that she did believe that whatever our next act is, that she felt it should be an ODE approved program, because her feeling was that ODE has a lot of resources and they don't just pick something and put it on there, and those resources go out and find and research and do all these things. And that Oregon is pretty progressive when it comes to education, her view. Some people might say we're not, but and so there was trust in the ODE list is the bottom line. And so if there was going to be a change, then she felt it should come from an ODE program, and they would adapt if they have time to do it. So I wanted to share that because it was time that I put in to have a conversation with a person from their perspective. But I guess, as some of our public said tonight, I mean, it's hard for me to vote on something just on pure blind faith. And I do have trust in all of you also, just as Chelsea and I think the rest of the board. But there's no way on God's given earth that I would walk in with my profession and tell someone that I want you to give me your life savings, and I just need you to sign this blank document and know that I'm going to come up with an idea that I know will work for you. So you give me all your money and I'll be back. Right? That wouldn't work for me. I mean, but I also understand that in private business, the process is different than in public education. So I don't want to sound like I'm, so I say that just to ask, is there going to be, because you've been doing this work, is there going to be something presented to us that, hey, we've looked at option A, B, and C, one that supports what we have, one that tweaks it, or one that just wrecking balls it and we bring in a whole new concept? Are we going to have that type of opportunity to make an educated decision on how we represent this whole place?
Yes, just, you have a couple of really good questions in there, I think. And first of all, the time piece, our district, in addition to a process that involves teachers thoroughly and, looks at that student learning data, on the other end, there's 2 years of spending time with using. So it's not just now, it's something else, and working with those materials. And that means that principals devote those Wednesday afternoons when children go home from school early to that professional learning, so that they have time to actually work with it with their colleagues. Then in terms of what actually does the new curriculum, when that comes forward, yes, absolutely. We will be bringing that forward with the process, and you will approve that process. The only thing that this vote is about is saying, we approve that you didn't adopt in 2022. You have to have materials by 2024, but it doesn't preclude you from giving staff direction about move faster. So I just want to be clear about that. It's by 2024. That's an endpoint, fall 2024. The actual postponement vote is just approving that. So sometimes those things get confused.
Okay. That's it for me.
All right. I don't want to go past you if you want to say something.
No, I think just one, again, for some clarity, what is the vote about tonight? Because I know there's two things. There's a lot of interest in the renewal process, what we're going to get, how teachers are going to be involved, what's going to be presented to the board. If you want it sooner than February, that's separate from the ask that's here tonight, which is we didn't get the materials in this fall. We'll get them in at least by next fall. So we need to be able to submit that. We need to be able to push send on that document that Director Sloop was holding up. And there shouldn't be any surprises about what we fill on it because we provided that information. It's what our current program is, and you know the reason why the need for the postponement was there. So it's very simple for us to fill out and give exactly that information. And we want to be able to get that to ODE right away so that now we can shift and focus on the bigger piece, which is what I hear a lot of interest in, which is what are we doing going forward? And what is that renewal process going to involve?
So what I'd like to do is we're going to call the vote, but before we do that, I'd like to just say what Director Wyatt emailed me since she couldn't be here. And then I'll just speak a little bit. I'll just kind of explain the direction I'm going to vote and speak to why. So Director Wyatt had said that she was in support of the procedural postponement and she gave a bulleted list. And it was things like, this is really only about complying with an ODE timeline. It doesn't mean that we're stepping away from best practices with our early readers. That this vote is more procedural. It doesn't slow the steady and determined work that we're doing to review and renew the literacy curriculum so that it will work for all students. Basically a point around that trying to fast track by not approving this to use that as a tactic to fast track a process that's already underway is not the appropriate approach and would deviate from best practices that we follow as a district. She has several more points, so I think that that's enough to kind of give a sense of where she was falling. We don't do proxy votes, so she just wanted to voice kind of where she would land. And then I'll just say, based on what I'm hearing from our parents and the materials that I took in from them and what I'm hearing from you, Dr. Soyson, I'll vote yes to approve this ODE requirement. And I'm making that vote based on a few things. One is, yes, the form is blank, and yes, we had a thorough presentation that's going to populate that form. So I understand that I was just delivered the content that's going to be placed into that form. That I trust our administrators in the process that you go through. And so when you tell me that that content is going to populate that form, I believe you. And then also just a recognition that that this is an ODE requirement, and it did allow us to have another robust discussion. And what I'm really hearing is that the board is going to get regular updates. At any point, the board can ask for another update that doesn't go away. And that the process will be robust, that you are involving and will continue to involve educators' voices. And I know we already have been listening to parents. They're shaping the process already by their advocacy. And we've been responding to their advocacy, and that will continue. That's not going to stop. And so I know that those steps are already going to be in place, that voting yes to this allows us to file that with ODE and just continue the process that we're doing to choose an ODE recommended curriculum, which is what I'm hearing you say we plan to do. So a lot of what I'm hearing our advocates ask for, I'm seeing is it's happening, it's in place, we're doing it. And so I feel comfortable saying yes to a procedural move with ODE, trusting that the process will be robust. And I invite, if anybody else wants to say anything about which direction they're going to vote, you're welcome to. Otherwise, if not, we can call the vote.
I'm sorry. My microphone wasn't on. I just want to say I appreciate your sense of urgency and the fact that you mentioned that, we need to have it in place by fall 2024, but we are looking to see how we can possibly even speed that up. And what I didn't hear was speed it up just to get something in, to get something earlier. But as Chair King talked about, that it would be a robust, good process, but with also that sense that we want to do best for our kids. And so I know we've always tried to do that. And you always talk about Dr. Ludwig, the Maya Angelou, her quote about you do the best you can until you know better, and then you do better. It's something, I know that's not perfect, but I think about that in this terms. It sounds like based on what the thinking was earlier, we adopted what we felt was best. And now we're learning things and maybe we know a little bit better. And so we understand that now we want to do better for our kids or different, whatever that might mean. But I just want to say, I appreciate that sense of urgency. I asked that question during the work session that we had about, hey, when we first rolled it out, is it possible to speed up this process? And I hear that there is that sense. The other thing I would say is that there's part of me that would really like to see the form. I certainly do trust, and I know you've presented it, but I'm wondering if at least the board could receive a copy once it's filled. I know you've talked about what you're going to put on it, but I do think just due diligence follow-up, it would be wonderful once it has been submitted, that if the board all received it, just so we had it, that would be great. Thank you. And I'll be voting to approve.
Okay, Ms. Douglas, please call the vote.
Director Sloop,
Aye.
Director Taylor,
Right.
Chair King,
Aye.
Vice Chair Thompson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So that concludes all of our agenda items, and we'll move on to the public comment portion. And thank you for those of you who are sticking it out. I will revisit some of our guidelines for public comment before I call you up. This is for folks who signed up here. It's for folks who are speaking to items that are not on the agenda and you do live in the West Linn-Wilsonville School District. And just in case you were not here earlier, I think a couple of main things are that you get 3 minutes. Please come up to the podium and address the board. You might not see us or you won't see us respond and engage in dialogue. That's because we're listening, and we ask you to direct your comments this direction since you're addressing the board rather than turning around and addressing the camera or some outside audience other than the board. And everybody's been doing a fantastic job of not clapping and booing for the most part. That's great. We try to hold a certain decorum, and so don't clap or boo or anything like that from the audience. If you have a complaint about an individual, then we have a separate complaint process that we ask you to follow, and that can be found on the district website. Doing so in a public meeting here is not the process that we follow. I think that's it. Yeah. All right. So I will begin calling you up, and I will start with Catherine Pellegrin.
Hi, my comment is regarding something that's already been resolved, and I was thankful for the outcome of the library committee meeting. However, I wanted to express my views nonetheless. My name is Catherine Pellegrin. I'm speaking here tonight in response to the recent opinions voiced in support of banning books from our school libraries. I've been a resident of West Linn for 11 years and am the mother of a Rosemont Ridge 6th grader, as well as a class of 22 West Linn High School graduate. I'm incredibly grateful for the education that both of my children have been privileged to receive. While both of my children have vastly different interests, their learning has been unconditionally nurtured by an outstanding group of teachers, administrators, coaches, and librarians. At a time where our country is experiencing unprecedented division, the value of an unbiased educational approach is critical, where every student's voice can be heard, honored, and seen, no matter who they are or what they believe. The adolescent and teenage years are an incredibly delicate time for our kids. It is a time of uncertainty, discovery, curiosity, and joy, and sometimes loneliness, self-doubt, and trauma. Providing support from every angle during these years is essential and in some instances life-saving. We are all unique, and it is our duty as adults, as parents, and as educators to support and celebrate each child, no matter who they are. Access to literature that represents all children is paramount. Literature provides infinite benefits, including showing an expanded view of the world, offering new perspectives, escapism, developing empathy, fostering new ideas, and helping to prepare the reader for the future. The right book can provide recognition and even validation of an idea or feeling to the reader who might have otherwise felt alone, awkward, or insecure about. Books provide a path for understanding complex issues, and young people deserve to see themselves reflected in what they read. I am proud to live in a country that does not restrict how I express my opinions, who I marry, what religion I practice, or what I read. The attempt to infringe on these rights is rooted in political ideology and moral prescriptivism. The notion that a fellow parent, not an educator, should dictate the books that are available to our kids is simply outrageous. In this great country, every family can freely decide on the value system that reflects their beliefs. This is what makes us uniquely American. And I have a warning to the group in support of this moral policing. If your child has ever used the internet, be it for casual searching, gaming, or social media, they have been exposed to far greater dangerous material than what will ever be found on our library shelves. The content of the books in question, in contrast to the violence, pornography, predatory behavior, bullying, and harassment online, cannot even be prepared. If your kid isn't watching this at home, I guarantee you they will elsewhere. This, my fellow parents, is where our children are most vulnerable, not in their school libraries. Thank you.
Jeff Garcia.
Before I get started, I just want to say thank you to Kelly. The work that you do for the board is amazing, and I think that goes in being a day of respect and representation. Thank you. So, good evening. My name is Jeff Garcia, and I do have children attending our schools. I'm here to thank our review committee first and foremost for rebuking these demands from the quote unquote Oregon's Moms Union. Boy, it was absolutely embarrassing that our district was making the news for the wrong reasons, joining the likes of Florida and Texas. I'm very proud of the work that you have done, and now we can focus on the real issues that are affecting our students. History has proven time and again that inclusion and access to information is far more beneficial than exclusion. Thank you for striving to create an inclusive environment that respects and values diversity, protects our First Amendment rights, and our kids' access to these literary masterpieces. If your child accessed something that you told them not to from one of their friends, well, that's a parenting issue that needs to be addressed between you and your child. This Moms Union has made it clear that they will not stop at protesting these 8 books. If you look into their posts by this group and the other members of this group, they're also against the American Library Association. They're against the National School Board Association. They're actively encouraging teachers, our teachers, to leave their unions, and they're pushing back on climate curriculum, gender inclusivity, and more. They've already stated that discussing rape in literature is equivalent to pornography. That's disgusting. Rape is a violent crime, and to label it as anything else other than a crime is completely reprehensible. Let's be real. This was never about pornography or drugs in books or protecting our kids as they try to claim. This was simply about them imposing their beliefs on everyone else, especially evident when the 2 union captains' children are already graduated and are homeschooled. And furthermore, it is deplorably unacceptable that one of the OMU captains stated, and I quote, "Being gay is a sin." But in that last meeting, they said they don't have any issues with LGBTQ community. Is that not hypocrisy or misleading at the very least? Such harmful and hateful discriminatory beliefs have absolutely no place in our community, and they create a toxic environment for all of our students, not just the LGBTQ students. Thank you for standing up against hate and rejecting this bigotry and racism in all of its forms. We must not rest, and we have to continue to disavow this group and any other group that tries to erase, ignore, cancel, or ban important factual aspects of our history. Nor will they be able to infringe upon our First Amendment rights by attacking important literary pieces that address factual, real-world issues like sexual assault and drug addiction, or simply coming of age with questions about oneself and not having a parent you believe that you can trust. Our LGBT community deserves respect and representation in literacy. They deserve representation in art and history. And look, I know that facts can be hard to believe, but sometimes climate change is real. Gender is different from sex, and no, you cannot get a concussion from reading a damn book. All
right,
scientifically
Jeff
proven facts.
Garcia.
Racism and bigotry are clearly still alive and shameful part of our history.
Mr. Garcia, are you done? Okay.
Thank you for
You're
your
good?
continued repudiation of these attempts
All
to
right,
inject harmful
thank you.
discrimination in our schools.
Okay. Johanne Olivier. Johan.
That was a good try, Johan.
Johan.
Thank you.
Okay,
Hi.
thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank the board for their very, very difficult job that they do day in and day out, and it's clearly become a lot more complex. I came here tonight because I heard about banning books. That brought me here and made me stay till now. I'd like to thank the board because I see that there's a rigorous process in place to ensure that those that would ban books do not have their way without very thoughtful and comprehensive process. So thank you very much. I'm mollified. I'm not going to take up my time. I'm not going to take any more time of the folks here this evening, but thank you very much. I appreciate the work you do. Thank you.
Brian Bowe. All right, we may have lost Brian to the clock. Jenna Rangel.
Good evening. My name is Jenna Rangel, and I'm here to bring awareness to an ongoing issue at Lowry Primary, which some of you may or may not be aware of. Lowry struggles with elevated radon levels, which has been a known issue since 2020. Finally, in the summer of 2022, they renovated their HVAC system with the intent of it lowering the amount of radon present in the building. While it did improve the overall levels, there were a number of rooms that were still at dangerous levels and over 4.0 picocuries, which according to the EPA is considered hazardous. At the beginning of the school year, they were aware that the radon issue had not yet been resolved. However, they chose to not disclose this to the parents. One classroom in particular has especially high levels, but regardless, students were placed in the classroom since the beginning of the school year, and not one parent of the students in that classroom was made aware. Lowry spent 6 months calibrating the HVAC system in this classroom, knowing that it wasn't functioning as they hoped it would. A radon level test was conducted early February, and 5 rooms came back with dangerous levels of radon, one in particular classroom coming in at 7.4, almost double what the EPA deems a safe level of radon. The EPA also states that radon poses a greater health risk to children than adults. My 6-year-old twin daughters, starting their kindergarten year at Lowry, were in the classroom with the highest level of radon. The school placed children in a classroom that they were well aware had dangerous levels of radon, and it was not disclosed. The aforementioned classroom has now been shut down and moved to a new room. Last year, students were placed in this same classroom with high radon levels, with no mitigation plan in effect. How can it be acceptable for a school to willingly place our children in toxic classrooms without as much as disclosing the risk to parents? As a community, we place trust in the hands of our school administrators, and they opted to gamble with the health and safety of our children. This is a public health issue and should have been disclosed to the parents of every student in the school. Ultimately, the health and safety of our children reside on the parents, and we should have been made aware and given the choice to proceed, elect a different classroom, or possibly a different school. Thank you.
Melissa Miracle.
My name is Melissa Miracle, and my daughter Audrey is 6 years old and in kindergarten at Lowry Primary.
On February 23rd, I got an email along with the rest of the parents at the school stating that 5 of the 38 locations tested for radon were above 4.0 picocuries per liter, which is a safety limit established by the EPA. At that time, there was no communication about exactly where in the school the high levels of radon were. 5 days later, I got a second email stating that my daughter's classroom was one of the locations that tested higher than 4.0 and had in fact tested at 7.4 picocuries per liter, nearly double the acceptable limit. The administration informed us that they were moving the class to a new room out of an abundance of caution, their words. Such high test results and the decision to move classrooms was alarming news for parents. The last time this classroom had been tested was in 2020, and it had tested at 7.5 picocuries per liter, which means that Lowry's administration made the decision to place children in a classroom with known high radon levels for the entire 2021-2022 school year, and then again when school started at the beginning of this year. In neither instance were parents of incoming kindergartners informed of the radon levels in the classroom or the school. In addition, Pat McGuff, the Director of Operations, explained that since the test performed in 2020, the 2023 test revealed 4 new locations where radon measured above 4.0 picocuries per liter. And because of this, he called the situation, quote, a building-wide problem. What I and many parents are angry about is the lack of transparent, detailed, and timely communication by the Lowry administration to the parent community about the radon levels, their locations, and how the administration plans to mitigate this building-wide problem moving forward. We understand that the Lowry administration has done everything legally required of them in terms of radon testing, attempts at mitigation, and informing parents. However, this is clearly not sufficient to maintain the safety of our kids and the trust of our parents. My hope is that you all would agree with me that it's not ethical to usher in kindergartners into a classroom with known hazardous levels of radon without first informing parents. I am asking you to amend the radon testing and protocols plan that was adopted in 2016. I would like you to include protocols for actively informing parents of recent radon levels at the beginning of the school year. After a test, all parents should be notified of hazardous results, their locations, and detailed plans to mitigate. We deserve updates on mitigation and proof that it has worked. We expect and deserve a higher ethical standard from Lowry administration and the district. Thank you.
Lauren Zarilli.
Good evening. My name is Lauren Zarelli and my daughter Nora is a kindergartner at Lowry Primary School. I grew up in this district. I went to Willamette, Athey, and West Linn. On February 28th, I received an email advising my child's classroom exceeded the 4.0 per liter of air action level with an exact reading of 7.4. These are our babies. Where radon lives at the bottom, I went and volunteered in those classrooms. Those kids sit right on the floor where all the radon is supposed to build. I had no idea what this meant. I'd had my house tested for radon before because it's a common Oregon practice. Nothing was disclosed to our family prior to the school year starting and all we had to do was to start digging for answers and demanding clarification and transparency. We met with the current administration and honestly, I'm disappointed by the response we've received. And this is why I'm here. The communication we have received is not acceptable. There should be guidelines in place to keep impacted families and staff informed. We've been given platitudes without guarantee of action or urgency. We've asked for follow-ups and a plan for communication, and the responses we have received are less than satisfactory. We all have the same goal here, to create a welcoming and safe place for students to learn and thrive. So I'd like to use my time to focus on the West Linn-Wilsonville School District Radon Mitigation Plan that was signed by the Director of Operations in 2016 in response to HB 2931, which later became ORS 332.166-167. I'm asking for immediate implementation of a communication and education strategy to the West Linn-Wilsonville radon testing protocols. The lack of communication and transparency gives the appearance that the school and district are trying to hide the issue. If there is nothing to hide, then help us build back trust which has been lost. The communication and education strategy should include, but is not limited to, at the start of every school year, new and returning families should be advised of the radon mitigation plan and dates of testing and levels in the classroom and common areas. Every room should contain a posting visible to all students, staff, and visitors of the room's date stamped and advising of the most recent levels measured. Lastly, a detailed communication plan to update and educate staff, students, and families impacted in every classroom undergoing testing and/or mitigation where testing levels were above the 4.0 level. This would include regular emails, 30 days for the administration to provide us with a status update, something that I have begged and pleaded with getting a regular update. This would provide us with updates, also an advertised town hall of experts, including the administration's operations and subject matter experts to address questions and concerns. In conclusion, my expectation is that the West Linn-Wilsonville School District will choose to demonstrate to the students, staff, and families that our concerns are being heard and immediate action is taking place. We shouldn't be here begging for the safety of our children.
Karen Salvetti.
Oh, feels good to stand up for a second. All right. It continues to be stated that library books are not curriculum, that they are supplemental. Though classes have required library time where they must attend the library and look at and check out books. There are multiple projects where students need to use supplemental books for the required curriculum. My 6th grade daughter, for instance, has multiple independent reading journals that are required. They have to do a project at the end of the term for each of these, using the books from the library as part of their curriculum. To say they are not being required is being naive. The district has standards for movies being shown in schools, for curriculum being chosen. Why not these supplemental curriculum items? On the budget tonight, we learned that the same amount of money is being spent on textbooks as on library books, $600,000, the budget showed. I submitted a formal complaint at the lack of process and procedure for library book selection. I heard from Barb and from Dr. Ludwig in response to my complaint. Barb shared with me that they were creating a more detailed process to library book choosing. I'm hoping we can see that as a community. Dr. Ludwig shared with me that there will be no committee made for reviewing new or current books selected. What specifically is the process and criteria for librarians? It's been shared that they meet monthly and they use some websites, but no checklists, no specific procedure, no criteria. If that is available, can it be shared? It was stated there's a handbook and policy. Is that available for parents to see? This goes back to goal 3 of the district and the transparency the district strives for, to generate community involvement. This community would love to be involved in this process. Can we? Will you let us in? There's clearly passion on both sides of this library book topic. I don't know how much the board can help with this, but those of you that can see there is a lack of transparency and a lack of procedure, can this desperately needed policy and procedure be looked at like all the other curriculum? Can it involve the board? Is that something that you guys can step in and help with, as I have been stopped in my public complaint forms? I am disappointed at the book review committee. I'm glad it happened. I guess I shouldn't be surprised at the outcome. It's disappointing for me as a mother of a sexual assault victim from when she was 7 years old. Nobody gets to walk up here or anywhere and say that the way I parent or the way anybody parents is wrong. If you've never walked that, you don't understand how wildly protective you become over every situation. Outdoor school is coming up. I visited the location yesterday with many other parents. She probably won't be attending, and I want to come to the board with a new location for that. So that'll be up next for me.
Matt Bell.
Thank you, school board representatives, Kathy, and district leaders. I'm here today as the vice president of the union to address current issues regarding our libraries. We're concerned that recent public comments critical of our teacher librarians have lacked merit and have lacked a proper process and intention of dealing directly with teacher librarians. We hope that the process revised in January 2023 can be tightened further so that community members who have concerns start the process by dealing directly with staff. This demonstrates that we as a community value those staff as dedicated professionals and human beings and encourages honest dialogue and conversation. If necessary, further action can be taken at the district level. Our teacher librarians are dedicated, certified professionals following local, state, and federal guidelines and maintaining our library's resources with the goal of supporting our students as lifelong readers. Their goal is to make sure that students have access to books that fit them as individual readers, and our students are extremely diverse. When community members challenged several books this year, none of their concerns were brought directly to teacher librarians. Maybe not. Each book review process has involved 2 superintendents, 2 teacher librarians, and a combination of teachers, students, and parents. They met for 2 hours, not including time used by staff to read the books. None of the books are used in classrooms for students. Teacher librarians have stepped up for this district in a big way since returning to normal schedules, taking over the online program to give students more learning options. They're essential in supporting staff when we're transitioning to distance learning. They're continually supporting classroom teachers and getting classroom materials, both print and online. Each of our school libraries are built recently, intentionally has a library in the center of the school. So teacher librarians are frequently support for students having academic or social problems. They're essential people in our staff who need your support. We ask the school board and superintendent ensure the following. All concerns about books go first to the teacher librarians, and there is a clear process and procedure for community members to follow if they're concerned, including a formal written complaint, and that any grandstanding is discouraged and is redirected to a process that is focused on dialogue and clear communication.
All right, that concludes our public comment portion. We do not have anybody here speaking from outside the district. And so we will just take a look here. We don't have another meeting in March. The District Equity Summit took the place of a work session. So we'll meet again for our regular meeting on April 3rd. And the meeting is closed.